Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Kushina and Minato are alive and left Naruto to fend for himself part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. It was a day like any other in the village hidden in the leaves, and just like any other day, guard duty topped the list as one of the most boring assignments one had to perform. It was easy work, and the pay was acceptable, but ever since a certain troublemaker died a decade ago, the village hadn't been very exciting, to say the least. Unfortunately, the villagers and a surprisingly large amount of the shinobi forces partied for 2 days straight, but it switched the joy to sorrow when the Uchiha massacre occurred, with only one member of the clan managing to survive that night. Many, to the present day, blamed the event on the Kyuubi, stating ridiculous things such as it being revenge for destroying its weakened body. As if, damn kid, at least you knew how to make things more interesting. I'm so bored, I wouldn't even mind chasing that damn cat. One of the Chunin gate guards thought as he lined up a shot with a paper football that was folded into a perfect triangle. Miss it, miss it, miss. The other Chunin guard on duty kept lowly chanting in order to throw off his comrade's concentration, while he pressed his thumbs together and pointed his index fingers upwards to form a goal post, which was meant for the paper triangle to flip through, if successful. Would you shut it, Izumo? Just remember our little bargain when I make this shot. The other guard named Kotetsu barked as he continued to line up his shot. The two had known each other since they were genin, and Izumo knew his chanting was one of the things he hated back then, and now, yeah? As if you'll make it. Just make sure you remember, Kotetsu, that if you miss, you have to take Kakashi's Ika and burn it, Izumo said with a small smirk, remembering the last person who attempted to do that, and shuddered at remembering what happened to the poor fellow. The idiot got a kunai to the nuts for his troubles. Just as Kotetsu was about to take his shot, he noticed 4 figures down the road walking towards the gates and started to smile. Well, looks like we'll have to wait for that now, won't we? He said as he pointed in the direction so his friend was aware of the newcomers. There were 2 tall figures, both of them male, if their stature was anything to go by. One looked about 6 feet tall, give or take a few inches, and had an athletic build that was noticeable through the cloak he wore. The other was a little shorter, 5'11" at least. The final 2 of the group, both looked to be female. They were both about the same height of 5 feet 9 inches, which was tall for females. Their matching cloaks kept their clothes concealed, and their hoods hung low over their faces, hiding their actual appearances. As the group of 4 arrived in front of the great wood gates, Izumo took the initiative to speak up. Halt! State your names and business within Konoha, he said authoritatively. In response, without hesitation, the taller of the cloaked males reached and tossed him a scroll, but continued to walk forward into the village with the other 3 in tow as they passed the threshold of the open gates. Stop! You haven't been permitted to enter yet, Kotetsu shouted, preparing to apprehend them. Kotetsu, it's okay. They can enter, so let them do just that, Izumo stated calmly while his face was frozen in surprise. Here, look at this, he said in explanation, then tossed the scroll to his partner and waited for his reaction. All he got was a small laugh. The entire village was in for a rude awakening, and life in the leaf was about to get more interesting. Location, Hokage Tower. Time, 9:55 a.m. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, also known as the Professor due to his wisdom, knowledge, and leadership of Konoha, was locked in an epic battle and sad to his arch-nemesis. Paperwork. He stopped to turn and take a look at the portraits of the previous Hokage. As was common for the past several years, sadness and guilt plagued the Hokage's heart as he glanced at the picture of his successor and predecessor, the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Minato Kushina, he sighed in thought-filled loathing. I'm sorry I could not protect your son well enough. I only hope that you can forgive this old fool for his wrongdoings. At times I believe this village doesn't deserve what you've done for them. He opened one of his drawers and took out a small, framed picture he'd taken with their son over a decade ago. He smiled as he remembered the happiness of that day. But just as quickly, he frowned as he remembered how the day ended for the young boy. I will never forgive those bastards for what they did to you, Naruto. May you rot in hell, Fugaku. He began silently fuming, causing his killing intent to unconsciously begin leaking out the more his anger grew. His thoughts went interrupted when a cat-masked ANBU woman with long purple hair flowing down her back and appeared in a kneel before his desk. Pardon my sudden intrusion, Hokage-sama, but you have some important visitors, she said with a light-hearted and pleased tone in her voice, though managed to remain sounding as professional as should be. Sarutobi eyed the woman for a moment before nodding. Right, please send them in, Nico-san. The third answered, once again calm, and prepared to see these guests. Time to see how much you've really changed, lad. However, the Hokage's eyes slightly narrowed when he saw 4 cloaked individuals walk in, followed by 4 more ANBU operatives. What is the meaning of this? He said with more than a little heat in his voice. Forgive us, Hokage-sama, but some of us did not feel comfortable with leaving 4 unidentified individuals with you. One of the other ANBU answered back while staring only towards the cat-masked member. Even with the veiling mask on, everyone could feel the glare that was directed at the purple-haired ANBU. Hiruzen waved a withered hand dismissively. Nonsense, I can assure you that they are of no harm to me, nor to anyone else of this village. All of you except Nico are dismissed to return to their regular duties. The professor replied. Sir, the group answered in unison while giving a mild salute as they turned to walk out of the office, the door clicking shut behind them. Nico-san, could you place a privacy jutsu up, please? I feel this conversation will be one of great importance, and this office can't stand to continue leaking important facts. She nodded her head and went through a few hand signs before she was interrupted. No need to, Nico-chan. I have another way. The taller of the cloaked individuals offered as he pulled out a small piece of paper with the kanji for privacy written on it. He placed it against one of the walls and spoke. Permanent seal activation. The old Hokage watched in mild amazement as the parchment replicated itself to every corner of the room. This is my gift for you, old man. It is a permanent privacy seal that can be activated whenever you want to without the use of chakra or hand signs. Just say seal to activate, release to deactivate. He then removed his hood, revealing his facial features. The male showed himself to have long, spikes blonde hair tied into a ponytail that reached just between his shoulder blades. There were also 3 whisker marks on each cheek, a trait that he possessed since birth, but were thicker now, giving him an even more pharaoh-like appearance. His eyes held a darker blue hue than remembered, and to the old Hokage's shock, his pupils were slitted. He instantly calmed down, however, when he was given a small smile by one, Naruto Uzumaki. It's good to see you again, old man. He said in a calm and smooth tone, the mature resonance surprising the elderly Kage as Naruto went to the cat-masked ANBU and gave her a tight hug, nearly engulfing the smaller framed ANBU woman, and, it's good to see you too, Yugao-ne-chan. I missed you so much. He whispered to her, words heavy with emotion. Yugao said nothing as she returned the hug, and if you looked closely, you would have seen that she was lightly shaking as she held on to him, trying her best not to turn into a sobbing mess. This was breaking all sorts of rules, but she didn't care. Her little brother was alive and healthy. Once she clocked out, she was going to go home and have a good cry and then hunt him down and interrogate him on where he'd been for the last decade and then beat him within an inch of his life for not telling her. It's great to see you as well, Naruto-kun. Sarutobi provided with a warm smile. He was happy at this simple show of affection because now he knew not everything was lost. The boy was back home, and the legacy of his father could live on. He could only hope for the last part. He noticed that the other male removed his hood to show his features. His hair was in much the same blonde spikes as Naruto's, minus the ponytail, as it was shorter and ended just above the shoulder plates of his clothing. His piercing blue eyes were almost the same as Naruto's, but without the slitted pupils. His eyes were those of a very experienced warrior. One who had seen a lot in his life and likely at a young age. The type of aura around his being gave off a feeling of incredible, latent power and unwavering confidence. It was amazingly similar to the same aura the 4th Hokage would give off before he would go into battle. It may have been him being tired, but he thought he saw a flicker of hatred in his eyes. He was imagining it. He shifted his gaze and was now staring at the 2 cloaked females whom he had yet to meet. And who might these 2 lovely ladies be? The professor asked in a polite manner. She is my companion, the shorter blonde answered as he gestured her to slide back the hood. The result showed a stunning, young woman with long brown hair, braided in a ponytail down her back, and 2 locks of hair going down the front of her shoulders. Her beautiful green eyes showed a deep inner calm, as well as the proper base of a strong woman. Good day to you. My name is Uzumaki. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lord Hokage. I've heard many great things from Naruto-kun. Cloud-kun has grown to like you as well since you were one of the few people that cared for Naruto. She said. Uzumaki? The old Hokage practically yelled in surprise before narrowing his eyes. That is a story in and of itself that could be told later, as it would take too long to iron out all the details. The young Jinchuriki explained, bringing the attention back to him. But to sum it up, we all decided to have the same name since we are practically family. Plus, my tenant told me about my lineage from my mom's side and I would like to revive the Uzumaki name. Sarutobi held his benevolent demeanor, but was shell-shocked. He wondered how Naruto figured out what only 3 other people beside himself knew about his past. He strongly doubted any of them knew Naruto was even alive, so how was he able to figure out the truth? What he heard next made his blood run cold, and effectively answered the question that the Hokage was asking himself. Being sealed in 2 containers that were formerly the wives of Hokages, the Kyuubi was more than willing to comply on informing me of my heritage. Naruto said then, and silence suffocated the room for a few minutes. I see, so you've figured the truth about your parents, Naruto. I'm sorry that I couldn't tell you myself, but I thought it too risky to give you that information until you were able to defend yourself. Your father had many enemies after the last war. If any of them found out he had a son, then your life would have been in constant danger. My life was already in constant danger, he stated coldly, gaining a small flinch from the old Kage, but instantly calmed down. But I understand your reason and respect your decision. The saddened expression of the Jinchuriki matched the melancholic cadence with which he spoke. It just hurts is all. When I was younger, I always wondered who my parents were. I used to ask myself questions like, did they die? Did they leave? Did they hate me? When the Kyuubi told me who they were, I was relieved, proud, angry, and sad all at once. I never knew them personally, but it hurts to think about them, Naruto admitted with the sigh of someone who had a heavy burden weighing against him. Everyone could feel the pain he was radiating in that moment. It were as if he had been hiding that pain behind the mask of a hyperactive young boy. To everyone watching him, he was trying desperately to hold it in, but he seemed to be losing that fight. The second cloaked girl walked up to him and placed a hand on his shoulder in a comforting manner. I believe he understands how you feel, Otuto, and I know he is sorry for not telling you, but as he said, it was for your own well-being. If you died, then none of us would be together as we are now, she said in a soothing tone. He wiped his eyes and gave her his trademark grin. You're right, I do forgive him. Thanks, Nei-chan. Nei-chan? Sarutobi asked. The last female removed the hood of her cloak to reveal a girl that looked to be a year or two older than Naruto. Her sun-kissed blonde hair was straight, and flowed down her back as far as mid-thigh. The hair was gathered and tied in a ponytail wrapped in white bandages part way down its length. She had the same 3 whisker marks on her cheeks as the younger teen, only less defined, though she possessed the same slitted blue eyes. If one didn't know Naruto was an only child, they would have wait. Who are you really? You have the same features as Naruto-kun, but he's an only child. You couldn't really be brother and sister? The aged Hokage inquired with an assertive tone. Technically, we are related, just by different means, Hokage-sama. My former name was Yujito-ni. I am also a Jinchuriki, just like my Otuto. Flashback. 17 years ago / location, Kumo Mountain Research Facility. She kept flashing in and out of consciousness, catching the occasional sound of a voice here and there, somehow audible amongst the constant underwater ambience that surrounded her ears. Mostly, what she heard was useless drivel discussions of what sounded like vital readings that she assumed were hers, measurements, quantities of things, and the like. But on one particular occasion, she could faintly detect the click and thud of a door closing. She then heard a voice, coming from a slight, pale-skinned man who wore long black hair and a ponytail that she had come to know as Minaka. Ah, A-sama. How good of you to show up at my lab on such short notice. Knowing who A was, she brought herself to consciousness as best as she was able, given the sedatives she could feel in her system. Opening her eyes just enough to see, but not enough for anyone not looking to notice, she looked out into the room. She saw Minaka standing next to a figure whom she knew all too well and hated with a passion. Said figure was a tall man, somewhere between 6 and 7 feet in height. He had an Herculean physique with blonde hair and dark skin. He wore the standard Kumo Jounin attire, accented with gold bangle bracelets on each of his wrists. The man was Jounin Commander A, the son of the Sandame Reikage and Kumo's second in command. She then heard a speak. This better be of great importance to Kumo, Minaka, or I will find someone to take your place regardless of whether or not they lack your expertise for creating your test subjects. Moving just her eyes toward Minaka, she noticed that he paused suddenly at A's warning before returning to the eerie smile she knew he typically wore. She could only assume that Minaka knew the seriousness of A's threat. Of course it is, he responded quickly. Why would I ask you to come down here aside from the offbeat chance of forfeiting my life? Please note the specimen, here, said Minaka, pointing towards Yujito, who decided to close her eyes so they would think she was still unconscious, though she kept her ears open and listened intently. Your message mentioned this had something to do with the experiment Reikage-sama conducted 3 years ago after Yujito's knee suicide, said A, as he had read the report, but nothing ever came of it to suspect anyone had done anything wrong, and that after the girl's death, they just sealed the Nibi away until they found a better host. What does this project have to do with her? Yes, this has quite a bit to do with Yujito ni A-sama. You see, since you took over after the previous Jounin commander's death 3 years ago, you were only given certain pieces of information regarding that whole fiasco. I felt I should inform you of something that was intentionally left out in his report, and requested Reikage-sama to keep it a secret until now when it would be ready, said Minaka confidently. You sound quite proud of this little project of yours, Minaka, A observed. For your sake, it had better be worth it, or you'll be getting acquainted with my iron claw, A finished. This was not the first time he had threatened the man, and if things went well it would not be the last. Oh, I am quite proud of this test subject, A-sama. Behold, my experiment in all her glory, and the greatness that I have done, said Minaka. The talking stopped, and Yujito assumed that Minaka was again indicating her to A, who was probably studying her visually. Her assumption was proved true when she heard her speak up again. So then, what's so special about a naked little girl? She noticed the disgust in A's tone, and wondered if the giant man had thought that Minaka was a lilicon and a pervert. This is not just any ordinary girl, A-sama, Minaka began with confidence once again. This girl is an artificially created human, constructed from the DNA samples of Konoha's Yellow Flash and Konoha's Red Habanero, and anchored by the Nibi seal. It was kept secret until this point to keep the other nations from learning of her on the chance that they would try to infiltrate us to either free the girl or kill her. The girl has been absorbing chakra at an astonishing rate. Her power is incredible even without the beast sealed inside of her, and in the years to come, she will be unstoppable. There was a moment's pause on conversation once again before A responded, in a tone that clearly indicated he was both impressed and skeptical. We will see, Minaka. We will see. A few moments later, Yujito again heard the sound of the door closing. What she had heard intrigued her. She didn't know what their plans were for her yet, but she hoped beyond hope that by the time she was let back out, Kuma would allow Kunoichi back into their regular shinobi forces. 9 years later. Run away! Must escape. I won't let them poke and prod me anymore, were the only thoughts in the mind of a certain Jinchuriki, as she desperately tried to get away from where she was. Her hopes of being able to survive and serve her country under the Yandame Reikage, had been completely dashed. And Minaka had given the final verdict. They were going to lock her in the laboratories to do more experimentation on her. No! There was no way that she would be denied any longer. She needed to breathe the fresh air she knew was just a wall away. She wanted to smell the trees and flowers that were but a few steps away. She longed for her freedom. Hardening her gaze, she grimaced bitterly as she rushed past a hallway filled with mirrors. The blue skin and crimson hair, for the first time in her life, looked ugly and disconcerting. That was the proof staring at her right in her face, mocking her that she would never be able to be normal, just like Minaka had said. And, just picture Mystique from X-Men. When she had woken up, all she could hear were the frenzied cries of that insolent whelp. Some miscalculation must have happened on their part, proving quite fortuitous for her, because she felt far stronger than she thought she should. It was as though she was again completely tapped into Nibi's power, but that couldn't be. So then, what had happened? It would be a few hours later when the head researcher, a woman named Takami who actually treated Yujito like a human being and made her procedures as painless as possible, had personally come over to apologize to her on the mistake that was made. It turned out that the mistake was not as fortuitous as she had initially believed. Time seemed to come to a standstill when she was informed that she was degrading, and that she would be dying. What was worse was the admission that she only had a few weeks at most to live. She didn't even know what to feel. Hatred? For Kumo and what that bastard Reikage did to her. Yes, but that wouldn't change anything, would it? Despair? For not being able to ever feel that sense of validation as a living person? Maybe. Anger? For them wanting to still coop her up despite all the damage they've already done? In the end, it all boiled down to negative emotions, and she didn't like it one bit. She was one of the quieter girls when she was a kunoichi in her previous life, rarely ever speaking up unless she had to. She would constantly be aware of her surroundings, choosing to learn as much as she could by watching and analyzing while remaining inconspicuous like any good ninja should. She would listen attentively to the chatter around her, picking out whatever she could that could help her in any way possible. Most thought her quietude stemmed from coldness and indifference, the polar opposite of the demon sealed within her, but that was only because they didn't choose to get to know her or watch her more closely. She just didn't see a point in wasting energy over useless matters. After all, why should she show any emotion at all over something that would change nothing? Was she supposed to be happy and greet everyone with enthusiasm just because they were testing her? There were more important things to direct that kind of energy towards. Get her, don't let her escape, retrieve her at all costs, send for Bolt. She was brought out of her musings by the shouts of orders pertaining to her capture. Her entire body tensed at the mention of the Bolt. If those men intercepted her before she could leave the building, it would all but eliminate any chances she had in escaping this hellhole. She knew how strong they were, and with her current state, she doubted that she would be able to hold them off for any more than 10 seconds. Rushing through the hallways, she desperately tried to make her way towards the back exit as soon as she could. The Chunin and Jounin rushing behind her, and the din that they created only served to heighten the tension within her. Just a few more doors to go, and she would be outside in the open air, on open ground, and able to run in any direction she wanted as fast as her legs could carry her. Kunai and shuriken being fired at her were easily repelled by her more in-tuned ability over fire. With a wave of her hand, she created a thick fire shield behind her back, easily defending herself against the projectiles, melting all that came into contact with it. These insolent whelps were of no threat to her, and they had to know that. But then, why hadn't they stopped their pursuit? It was then that she suddenly noticed that they had, and something didn't feel right about it. Why, all of a sudden, did they stop now? Unless, she gasped as she realized she was being directed into a trap. Before she could even continue that line of thought, a nodachi pierced right through her guard, easily penetrating her torso as she was stopped dead in her tracks. A hard hook to the face followed right after she forcefully removed herself from the blade, and hot blistering pain rained down her back as another blow caught her right in the middle of her spine. Not wasting any time to even think about the severity of the injuries she currently had, she used whatever remaining energy she had and aimed it right at the floor beneath her. Adjusting her body position in midair, she launched herself right through the glass windows of her prison, before she landed hard onto the rocky, craggy ground of the mountainside. Fresh, cold air blew against her face even as she felt her conscience slowly fading away. A rush of footsteps surrounded her before arms grabbed hold of her body, attempting to put her into submission, only for her to resist and send miniature balls of blue fire to fend them off. She had to stay conscious, not matter what it took. She wasn't going back. She wasn't going back. She could tell that Bolt were watching her on the sidelines, the bloodlust obvious as it permeated through the dark night sky. Only she would know just how mortally injured she was with that stab of the nodachi. It had very narrowly missed her heart, Had that been pierced, then it would have been over within seconds. As it was now, it was just her lung, so now her death had been prolonged from seconds to hours, maybe a few days if she was lucky or unlucky, depending on how one chose to look at it. She knew what those bastards were thinking. Those men always had a sadistic streak when it came to her. They wanted her to bleed and suffer more before they took her back in. Such was the cruel nature of both Kumo's Black Ops. A familiar female voice suddenly rang through the area. "All right, that's enough. Who gave you orders to manhandle her? Release her this instant." Yujito could see the white-colored hair of Takami through her blurry vision. As she made her way over, she could see that the woman was wearing a lab coat with a black top underneath it. She immediately tried to assume command of the situation as she barked orders for the men to stand down. What is she doing here? Yujito asked herself in confusion, while also feeling a surge of relief upon sighting a person that was at least not a hostile. "But madam," the man holding the struggling Yujito down responded, "this Jinchuriki is now useless. It's all her fault that the research facility is destroyed. I claim no responsibility to this incident." Rage gripped at her as the voice of that man that had ruined her life echoed through the area. "It's much better to lock her up in the laboratories where we use her as a specimen for." Slap! With one swift move, that obnoxious researcher was sent crashing into the ground, holding his jaw in disbelief as he stared up at the woman. "Why you? How dare why you?" What he got in return was an enraged glare from a woman who had lost all patience. "You had better keep your mouth shut if you want to live to see tomorrow, Minaka. Or would you like to find out firsthand whether or not your skin can survive severe acid burns?" That was enough to intimidate the man and silence him to his sniffles of pain. Kneeling down, the woman quickly gave a check of her injuries, before motioning for the medical staff to do some emergency treatment. "Hurry and get a stretcher. She's gonna go into shock soon if we don't do something." Wondering just why this woman was helping her, the blue girl allowed them their administrations, the pills and injections, but to no avail. She could feel it herself. Her life was wasting away. "Hang in there, kitten. I'm working as fast as I can to help you," was the weaker response of her tenant. "Leave her be." A's boisterous voice resonated in her ears as she heard Takami swear under her breath. The yondaime Raikage strode onto the scene and surveyed the situation with a critical eye. Minaka stood up while nursing his still stinging cheek and smirked in Takami's direction before turning to A when the big man addressed him. "Why have you called me over this, Minaka? Did it not seem important to you that I was in conference with the daimyo?" If looks could kill, the man would have died at least a few 100 million times within that last second. "My apologies, Raikage-sama. Please forgive my stupidity and lack of consideration," Minaka offered in a contrite yet sleazy manner. He then turned to Takami. "Ha ha ha, why so serious, Taka-chan? There really is no need to treat her. She's a scrapped project, and seeing how she so wanted to leave the laboratories, I shall grant her that wish." With dramatic flair, Minaka turned to the others and announced, "All troops are to return to their normal posts. Medical staff members are to finish their current emergency treatments, nothing more, nothing less. Raikage-sama, if you would, sir, there is still much to discuss about Blurg." Before he could even finish his sentence, a reeling kick met his face without hesitation as he was trampled into the ground. Turning a furious glare to his attacker, he saw Takami standing over him. She yelled at the man she had downed for the second time. "Who the hell told you I would be following those orders? You just shut up and stay down. Medical staff, you're under my command and will do as I say, or else." Her eyes glinted dangerously, easily convincing them to carry on with their treatment of the fallen Jinchuriki. "Ugh, that's so mean of you, Taka-chan. But that's what I like about you." The fact that he got up as if no harm was done to him at all was quite impressive, that, or he was used to the physical harm administered to him on a daily basis. "Hojo, I'm warning you." Cracking her knuckles, Takami stomped towards the most infuriating man she had ever met in her life. "Bolt," the Raikage's voice interrupted her stride towards the despicable little mad scientist. "Please escort Dr. Takami to my office for now." "What?" Within seconds, she was restricted by two of the masked men, leaving a stunned expression on her face as she looked at A. "You would go so far as to allow a deteriorating little girl to be sent her death? Just what kind of sadistic monster are you?" "Relax, Kara-chan," Minaka mockingly assured her. "This is all for the sake of science. Even with the demon sealed in her, her DNA makeup is not holding together. She will be dead soon. It will be a pleasant surprise to see how long she does survive in the harsh environments." "And just how is this situation a pleasant surprise?" Yelling, Takami tried her best to wrestle her way out of the grasps of the two Bolt to no avail. A little kitten, born different than others, now facing elimination in a world where survival of the fittest is the golden rule of life, imagined the possibilities. What would possibly be her end? Would she end up with her life wasting away, or would she finally find the thing that she was born to seek out? Ah, the suspense. I cannot take it any longer. "You crazy, maddening fool! Raikage-sama, unhand me this instant." "Medical staff," the Raikage asserted, "by my orders, you are to finish your current emergency treatments and leave. We shall not interfere with her desire to escape from us. Guards are to stand down and let the Bolt take charge. Once she steps onto that road, she shall no longer be accepted back in the facilities building. Kill her if she comes near." Minaka began laughing manically. "Ah ha 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 ha. "This is gonna be great," as he rubbed his palms together in sick anticipation, only to be interrupted. The source of the interruption was a series of large explosions that went off all throughout the research facility, drawing the instant attention of the guards and the Bolt. Without a word, the Bolt members rushed off, followed by the other shinobi. Minato frowned in displeasure at being interrupted halfway through his speech and could only sigh lamely as he finished off his orders in an anticlimactic manner. Takami, on the other hand, could only gape at the coincidence of all this. If she was a betting woman, then she would go out on a tangent and say that this was actually planned by someone. "Come, Taka-chan, we must return to the laboratories at once to access the damage." Without looking back, Minato was already making his way back into the building. The white-haired woman hesitated for a few seconds, took one last look at the girl lying on the ground. She ran over to Yujito and whispered softly, "I'm sorry, honey. If you can, please survive and live as long and as happily as you can." She kissed the girl's forehead before rushing off as well. After all, if someone had dared breach their security, she had to make sure none of their secrets were stolen. The bleeding girl could barely understand what was going on all this time, and only barely managed to retain her consciousness as she felt the treatments coming to an end. By the time she was able to lift her head up, the entire area was rid of people. She was alone, with only the rocky ground for companionship. Knowing something must have happened for this retreat, she wasted no time in continuing her escape. Due to a lack of strength because of the blood loss, she had to half crawl, half drag her body across the ground, before finally, her entire body left the grounds of the research facility. Not even daring to stop for a moment, she braved on, forcing herself to ignore the searing pain with each movement she made. "I will survive this," she thought to herself in desperation. "I must survive this." Hours, days, the length of time she'd been crawling was completely lost on her, as time stopped having any real meaning for her. All that mattered to her was that next foot or two that she had to force herself to advance. After all, if she was moving, she was still alive, and where there was life, there was hope, right? A new sound was picked up by her ears, the sound of flowing water. She had to be near a creek or a river. Her clothing was now in tatters after her fights within research facility, and she began to notice that she was also severely dehydrated. Pulling herself with what was left of her strength, she forced herself into a sitting position against a large rock near the river. So tired, she complained to herself resignedly. Staring blankly at the ground before her, and at the flowing water just a few short yards away, she couldn't even begin to think of what she should do now. Her injuries were severe, and though they had been given some treatment, it was hardly enough. Now that she was no longer moving, thoughts of her future beyond the immediate began to plague her mind. She was never going to return to Kumo, but then, where could she go? And what would she do if she ever actually got there? Where would she stay on cold nights like this? How would she even get there? And how was she going to get food for herself before she died? Question after question bombarded her already fragile mind as she slowly felt the fatigue creep into her once again. Somehow, she felt like laughing. Just like before, she sat alone on the ground, all by herself, not commenting when everyone else had made friends with each other. In the end, I guess Minako was right. What good am I if I die like this? She sat quietly and closed her eyes. It's so quiet. I'll just go to sleep forever. The beat of her heart was slowing, and she was yawning. Images of the faces she cared for flashed through her mind. Emotions were almost non-existent now. She wasn't sad, or angry, or even disappointed. She was just numb. The fear of never being with her little sister no longer bothered her. "Wait, kitten, please." Yoruichi begged loudly in a tear-filled voice. "Don't give up. Don't let them win. Please don't let it end like this." "I'm sorry, Yoruichi," Yujito answered, not even bothering to keep her conversation on a mental level. "I just don't have any more strength. I can't keep this up. Why didn't I do this before? I'll finally be at peace," she thought to herself, managing a small smile before blacking out, unable to respond to Yoruichi's desperate pleas to stay alert and live. The first thing she felt upon becoming self-aware once again was pain, agonizing, excruciating pain. It felt like thousands of needles were being stuck and poked into her body. If she could liken what her insides felt like, she would say that her internal organs had been dunked in acid. Every muscle and fiber in her body screamed at her, letting her know just how close to death she had come. This had brought with it a point of curiosity. Why was she still alive? As the pain began to fade into the background, she began to feel other sensations. The feel of a soft bed beneath her frame, the pillows her head was laying against, the warmth she felt, and the weight of blankets over her body. Her mind soon became more alert, sharpening as she decided to take stock of her situation. She hadn't opened her eyes yet, not wanting to let whoever was near know she had awakened. First, she ran a swift assessment of her body's condition. She could feel that her regenerative healing factor was slower than normal, but it was working. Yoruichi was trying to close up the smaller cuts first so that she wouldn't have to replace as much lost blood when she started to address the more serious injuries. More to the point, her cuts and bruises had been bandaged. She couldn't determine the type of cloth used to do the bandaging, but she could feel them wrapped around her torso, which had taken the most damage. Between the bed and the bandages, Yujito could easily deduce that it probably wasn't a hostile that had brought her to wherever she was and treated her. However, that still told her very little, and just because she wasn't near any enemies didn't mean she was safe. Where was she? How did she get here? Was she in friendly territory, neutral territory? Wanting to know a little more about the area around her while still maintaining some secrecy, she sent a small pulse of chakra out of her body. The chakra acted like a sonar beacon, by constantly pushing a set amount of chakra out of her body at a constant rate, while still keeping herself connected to it. She could feel out her surroundings as the pings of her chakra bouncing off of objects and back to her told her where things were, and also what they were. To her alarm, she felt a massive chakra source that was only a few yards away from her, and it was slowly closing in on her position. Cracking her eyes just a sliver, she saw a figure that she guessed was male calmly approaching her bed. When he got close enough to her, she suddenly jumped him and slammed him to the ground. Shortly afterwards, she heard a shattering sound followed by a small splash. Apparently, her current warden host she didn't really know what he was had brought a bowl of stew over to her, if the ceramic shards and the chunks of meat and vegetables covered in dark brown liquid was any indicator. She turned her attention back to her captor/rescuer, who was staring intently at the 5 elongated claws protruding from her fingernails. She began to blush when she took in his features: golden blonde hair, electric blue eyes, 3 whisker-like birthmarks on each cheek that she thought gave him an exotic air, and a rich, healthy tan. He turned his gaze into Yujito's own eyes and kept himself as calm as possible. Yujito was impressed at how he kept his cool, though she certainly wouldn't admit to that right now. She also noticed on her hand and arm that her skin wasn't blue anymore, but a normal tone, albeit with a slightly darker tan than she remembered having before. "Who the hell are you? Where have you taken me?" Yujito demanded. "Okay, I'll talk. But first," the quickly jabbed her in the side, making the girl cringe and grab her side. His assailant distracted, he quickly swept her over and ended up on top, causing Yujito to gasp out of pain as she was thrown to the ground. Thinking quickly, the boy placed a seal on her and activated it. Yujito immediately felt her body lock up and found herself unable to move a muscle, no matter how much she struggled. "You bastard!" she hissed. "Look, I'm sorry, but you need to calm down before you hurt yourself even more. I'm no medic, and even after I fix your DNA makeup, I don't know if those herbs will work on your injuries or not. But to answer your first question, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm here to help you," explained the now identified Naruto. "Oh, really? How about you prove it?" "Fair enough. I was the one who found you leaning against a rock next to a river, half-starved, dehydrated, and on the Shinigami's doorstep." Kyubi was able to get in contact with Nibi, who was using every possible resource at her disposal just to keep you alive. "Through means too long for me to explain. I was able to fill in the holes to your DNA, and now you won't have to worry about being a splotch on the side of the road." Yujito seemed to calm down after hearing that. The shock of her not dying was enough to make her completely docile. Seeing that she had calmed down, Naruto released the seal, allowing her to move again. She looked at Naruto, who stared back at her in confusion, making her visage contort into a glare. "Aren't you going to help me get back into bed?" asked Yujito in a deadpan voice. "I don't know if I should. After all, you did just try to kill me," countered Naruto. "Well, what type of wounded ninja is willing to trust someone she doesn't know?" Naruto didn't look all that convinced. "Fine. I swear on my life that I won't make another attempt on yours." That was somewhat reassuring to him. Nonetheless, Naruto was cautious and on guard as he helped her to the bed she had just leaped out of, keeping a watchful eye for any surprise attacks. He went and got another bowl of stew and placed it on Yujito's lap, helping her sit up as she began to dig in. The two sat there in silence as Yujito ate 3 more bowls. Once she had eaten as much as she could, she sighed in relief and laid back down, facing the blonde. "You said that your name was Naruto Uzumaki, right? I think I've heard that name before. Maybe from Hai no Kuni?" asked Naruto. Yujito thought for a second before something clicked. "You're the kid that was killed in Konoha, and then the new daimyo punished the entire village for it. We were wondering why the fire daimyo was so angry with his hidden village. Actually, I was hoping to convince you to come with me." Sarutobi Hiruzen at the moment was showing his experience at keeping a mean poker face, but inwardly his brain was working like a track star on speed, running 1,000,000 miles a minute trying to comprehend what was in front of him. Reports years ago informed him that she died, although no one knew the cause nor if Kumo had decided upon a second Jinchuriki. Speaking of Jinchuriki, if this were to get out to the public, then serious harm could come to those around her, or even more serious if she were to retaliate to any of the discrimination that Naruto had received in the past, and kami forbid what would happen in the upcoming future. To top it off, she had many of the same features as Naruto. If you didn't know any better, you would have thought they were twins. He could already feel the headache that the council was going to give him. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Yujito-san. I cannot lie and say that I'm not surprised that I'm in the presence of another Jinchuriki. That is a rare occurrence that I would have never, in all my years of being Hokage, thought I would meet another person with a tenant in my village. If you don't mind me asking, which of the bijou do you hold?" he asked politely, not noticing Naruto's eyes slightly narrowing in suspicion. "You can answer truthfully, Yugine. We'll play along for now." Naruto mentally communicated to Yujito, while she seemed hesitant at first, perfectly playing her part of being wary. "I am the holder of Nibi no Nakomata, the two-tailed cat," she said in a calm tone while giving a bow. "Hokage-sama, if it is in your power, I would like join with Naruto in becoming a Konoha shinobi." "I don't see any problem with that. I can arrange citizenship. However, the part about joining the forces, we changed the minimum age requirement for genin and added 4 years to the program. Naruto, I think you'll like to know that you will be back in your graduating class. The both of you will have to take the genin exams, to be held in 1 week's time, so long as you prove yourselves capable. Naruto and Yujito both grinned. Also, before he died, your father instated something just in case of any situations with the council wanting to deny your heritage. At this, Naruto raised an eyebrow while everyone else perked up. What did he have in mind? Naruto asked. It's a law. It's a special law, for which you have option to approve of. The law states that you and your family that are active ninja will only answer to the Hokage, and will receive diplomatic immunity because of the crimes committed upon you and due to your political status as the last Uzumaki. In exchange, you and your family will have to stay with the military forces of Konoha for the next 7 generations with the same privileges and obligations falling onto them, and can be voided if one side does not meet the requirements. Though Minato was able to pass that off to the capital, otherwise that last clause wouldn't have been added. He thought afterwards. Minato was very thorough when it came to protecting anything of his, and he was known for having plans within plans, even when it came to his own son. So Sarutobi could only hope that the boy would never leave, and would make sure that his loyalties remain with Konoha. He glanced at the small grin at the other blonde man, Cloud he believed, and nodded his head. Yeah, I think that could work. He heard him say. Sarutobi nodded. One last thing, how do you stand towards the village? Naruto's facial expression turned ice cold. I haven't forgotten the treatment and abuse I received, nor will I forgive them for it either. If anything, I'll defend myself and my precious people, and with lethal force if necessary, but only if my party or I are attacked first. I can live in peace as long as I am left alone. Naruto's words caused Sarutobi to frown, but only a little. The boy had a right to feel as he felt, and he couldn't blame him. Well, with that said, I believe this reunion has come to an end. I have to finish my paperwork. The last word was spoken with a bad taste in his mouth. Oh, I almost forgot, Sarutobi said as he reached into a drawer of his desk and pulled out a small box with a spiral on it. It was a logo that Naruto recognized as the same symbol he always had patched onto his old jumpsuits. He inwardly shuddered at the memory of those hideous outfits he used to call clothes. Sarutobi opened the box while handing Naruto a set of keys. Before you move into the Namake's estate, it may need to be renovated after 17 years of not having been lived in. These are the keys to a nice apartment in the Shinobi district that is big enough to accommodate your temporary living arrangements until preparations are complete. The rest of the paperwork will consist of your father's will and bank statements. I believe that you should read them now, the Sandaime said with a gentle smile. The male Jinchuriki looked through the papers with a critical eye for a couple of seconds before deciding to open his father's letter to him. He was hesitant to read it, but willed himself forward. To my Sochi, Naruto, if you are reading this, then I have long since fallen at the day of the Kyuubi no Yoko's attack on Konoha. Hiruzen Sarutobi, you old team. I already know the truth. Naruto thought angrily that the old bastard in front of him trying to give him a fake letter, testing his intelligence. As he looked over the letter, he mentally scoffed as he noticed that there were tear stains on it, which he guessed that his father had been crying when he wrote it. He folded the letter and put it in his pocket, and started to unravel the first small scroll left to him. It was his father's will, an authentic will. I, Minato Namake's, 4th Hokage of Konoha and sole heir of the Namake's lineage, leave all of my financial earnings and possessions to my wife, Kushina Uzumaki, in the event that I die. If Kushina is unable to take the inheritance due to her death, then everything will be given to any children we may have when they reach the age of 15. The inheritance includes -$5,783,215,731 in my personal account, -$3,457,986,256 in the personal account of one Naruto Namake's, my mountain loft, all possessions located on the estate grounds, which includes my library and jutsu scrolls which can only be accessed by blood seals. To claim all that has been listed, see the current Hokage and show for authenticity. Naruto's left eye twitched a few times, but his mind was on standby while his body was on autopilot while he started to open the second scroll, which turned out to be his mother's will. I, Kushina Uzumaki, granddaughter of the late Uzukage of the former Whirlpool country, and sole survivor of the Uzumaki clan, leave all of my financial earnings and possessions to my husband, Minato Namake's. In the event that I die, should Minato be unable to take the inheritance due to his death, then everything will be given to any children we may have when they reach the age of 15. The inheritance includes -$3,456,786,465 in my personal account, -$798,243,543,234 of the former Yuzushiogakure no Sato's treasury. This can only be accessed by the blood of the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. All the celestial weapons of the Uzumaki clan, which are blood-sealed at the residence of Minato Namake's. My medical ninjutsu, taijutsu, and sealing scrolls of Uzumaki no Sato, which are blood seal at the residence of Minato Namikaze. To claim all that has been listed, see the current Hokage and show documentation for authenticity. Naruto looked at what he had inherited, and his eyes went wide as the blood began draining from his face. His body started to shake, followed by the cold sweats, and he actually began to foam at the mouth. He might have just been hearing things, but he thought he heard a low whistle in the back of his mind. It just seemed like too much for him to handle at the moment, and after that short spasm, he just blacked out. Cloud picked up the scrolls and skimmed them to see what the young blonde had gotten all worked up about, and subsequently let out a low whistle from what his eyes took in. Well, I guess it does pay to be a Kage. I think I might have to go for the title myself, Cloud said with a joking tone, knowing he would get a reaction out of the younger blonde. Naruto shot back up and looked Cloud square in his eyes. You can be a seals master or an assassin all you want, Cloud, but the leadership title will belong to me to protect those important to me. Ahem, like a certain Hyuga, Aries teased from the back of the group. At that time, a certain lavender-eyed girl emitted a mouse-like sneeze in her bedroom as she was writing in her diary about a certain blonde boy with whisker marks. I have no idea what you are talking about, Naruto said, trying to sound nonchalant and indifferent, but was lightly blushing from embarrassment to stay in character. Yugao tried to stifle a giggle while Yujito gave Naruto a questioning look. Now what is she talking about, Naruto? Do you have a little girlfriend somewhere and didn't tell me? I thought since we were brother and sister you were supposed to tell me these things. Yujito said in mock offense. Naruto's blush got deeper as he turned his head, still trying to hide his embarrassment. As she's just a friend, that's all, but I would have loved to had been more. But that was in the past, he thought. Well, I wouldn't mind meeting this friend of yours. The female Jinchuriki said with a Cheshire grin that put Naruto's to shame. Actually, you won't have to wait long as you can start attending the academy tomorrow. Sarutobi said, joining in on the torture of his surrogate grandson. Naruto had a look of betrayal on his face as he went 2 more shades of red. Cloud gave a low chuckle at the situation. Release! Sarutobi yelled to disable the seal and the kanji, and seals over the walls disappeared. Just like Minato, was all he could think, fascinated with the ease of the seal's functions. Well, now that we have that in order, we should call this meeting. I really have to finish up my work and it'll likely take me the rest of the day, amended Sarutobi with a slight headache building as he continued to think about the mountain of paper before him. Why not try Kage Bunshins to finish the work quicker? It would cut your work by at least half and you'll remember everything from the clones. Naruto advised as Yujito nodded next to him. The old Hokage's pipe fell out his mouth as he realized the truth in the boy's suggestion. He slowly got out a slip of paper that his students gave to him years ago. On it was a circle, and in the circle, it read, "Bang head here. Stupid. 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 Stupid," the Hokage said, while hitting his head on the paper on his desk. So, that's how Minato did it so fast, and he took that secret with him to his grave. Minato, you bastard, why didn't you tell me? He screamed to the heavens. He made the familiar hand signs and Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 clones of the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, appeared at the desk and began to split the papers amongst themselves. Thank you for the ingenious suggestion, my boy. I also have some papers to file for your return and the re-establishing of the Uzumaki clan in the Leaf. So, if you'll excuse me. He nodded to Yugao. See you soon, Naruto-kun, Yujito-chan, Aries-san, Cloud-san. You too, Yugao-ne-chan. And say hi to Hade for me, if he's not still mad about the helium in his inhaler. He still gripes about it every time the Chipmunks movie comes on TV, she said through a fit of giggles before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. See you later, old man. Naruto said to the Hokage as he and his family walked out of the door. Sarutobi could do nothing but smile now that the young lad was back. He seemed to be the same boy that left all those years ago, but something was drastically different about him. He had somewhat of a cocky attitude, and the aura that he and the young girl had around them expressed that they were strong as well as skilled. Things are going to be much more interesting in the village now. The third thought, but he would have to muse on that later, for now he had work to catch up on. It was then that he pulled an orange book out from his desk. Seal. Yes, I think I could get used to this, he said as a mischievous giggle escaped the old man's mouth. Phase 1 complete. Now on to Phase 2. I guess shutting the door didn't help after all. Naruto sighed when pretty much everyone in their vicinity looked towards the Hokage tower, and started to hear the Hokage scream, "Die you little bastards," followed by psychotic laughter. Naruto, Cloud, Aries, and Yujito were walking the streets of Konoha. Everywhere they went, the whispers followed. Children and teens looked on with curiosity, while much of the older generation recognized the young male of the group, and by now they had removed their cloaks off. Naruto wore a dark blue, sleeveless shirt that accented his well-toned abs and chest, showing that he had been through much training. It was a mature form for a 15-year-old to have. A long red cloak was tied around his neck, covering the bottom of his face so only his eyes and the top of his nose were revealed. His dark blue pants were a little baggy, kept at a loose fit, so that his pockets were easier to access for any type of item or scroll he may have been carrying. Instead of the standard ninja sandals, he wore dark brown boots and a dark brown, fingerless glove on his right hand with a spiral symbol on the backhand of the material. The glove on his left hand looked like the glove on his right, only this one had retractable, gold-clawed fingertips that were mostly hidden when not in use. There were also metal braces that went up his forearms and biceps with an unknown language imprinted on it. Cloud wore a sleeveless jacket with the collar popped up. It was zipped halfway to reveal part of his chest, much to the interest of some female onlookers while their crushes, boyfriends, and/or husbands scowled at this. On the jacket was a metal fox head with a hook in its mouth over his left shoulder. He wore the same type of pants and boots as Naruto, except his were black instead of blue. His gloves were also just as Naruto's, lacking the claw addition. Aries was wearing a nicely fitted pink dress that accommodated both her skin complexion and her hair. The dress was accompanied with a dark red, bolero jacket and hiking boots. The silver wrist bracers on both wrists gave her attire an added touch. Yujito wore a dark blue and white short sleeve with dark blue pants that ended at her ankles. Around her ankles were white bandages like the one worn to keep her hair in a ponytail. A blue sash hung from under the bottom of her shirt with a red spiral and clouds stitched upon its length. She wore dark blue fingerless gloves with the same spiral symbol that was on the sash. Bandage wrappings also covered both of her forearms, and on her left bicep were two of the same kind of braces that Naruto was wearing. The demon is back. Didn't we kill it a decade ago? Guess we'll have to be thorough this time around. These were just a few of the many whispers that accompanied the looks of fear, hate, and disgust that Naruto had expected he would get, so he ignored it all. Yujito, though new to the village, had experienced the same circumstances as Naruto from her own hometown hellhole, as she called it, so she, too, ignored it, but not as well as her Bijou brother. It took much of Nibi's mental counseling to calm the female Jinchuriki and prevent her from turning Konoha into an oversized scratching post. For now at least. Cloud, on the other hand, was trying his best to keep his anger in check. He didn't want to cause more problems than there already was. These ignorant villagers didn't understand that Naruto was just a boy, who carried a burden and not the burden itself, yet all they saw was the nine-tailed fox in human form. These ungrateful bastards. After everything he sacrificed for them to live on, slowly, he started to project a small amount of killer intent while trying to suppress his own rage towards this village of bigots. A moment later, he felt a delicate hand entwine into his, bringing him out of his upset thoughts. He looked to Aerith and saw pure concern for him in her eyes. Cloud hated to have her worry about him, but he knew it was only because she cared for him. He cared for her more than life itself, and her presence always managed to bring peace to his heart. The silent conversation they had quickly diminished all the pent-up anger and frustration. He decided not to give in to his inner darkness, which could lead to bad repercussions. For the villagers anyway. Their moment was brought to a halt when a large crowd formed in front of them. It looked to be about 30 villagers with random weapons such as bats, pitchforks, swords, etc. One fat villager holding a bat began to boldly walk up to Naruto and decided to grab him by the collar of his shirt. "You got some damn nerve showing your face and tainting our village with your presence, demon." He spat in anger, but his speech was slightly slurred, and he completely reeked of alcohol. Many of the other villagers in the group loudly agreed with what the fat man said. Chants of, "Kill the demon," and "Die, demon" began coming from the rest of the crowd as they instigated the confrontation. "Sir," Naruto began patiently. "It is plain to see that you've been drinking and don't have full control over yourself. So, if you wouldn't mind letting me go, I'll be on my way, please." Naruto finished in a completely calm tone. "Like hell I will. We're going to send you back to the hell that you came from, like the Yondaime should have all those years ago." He yelled in his drunken rage, literally spitting in the blonde's face. Cloud was about to intervene, but a slight twitch from Naruto gave him pause. Naruto didn't even frown. "If you do not let me go, I'm going to take that bat from you and turn you into a living, breathing lollipop. Now, are you sure you really want to ride this train?" Naruto replied in the same calm tone, a single brow raised in question to reinforce the meaning of his words. Cloud turned his head while Aerith and Yujito looked on with anticipated smirks on both of their faces. Drunkenly cocky, the fat villager sneered. "Well, choo-choo motherfucker." A certain ANBU, Black Ops Shinobi, was going about his duties. Check the northern perimeter for any problems and maintain the peace in that same area. It was equal to a C-rank mission, but it didn't fit his criteria as something he wanted to do. His latest dream was to teach and lead a genin squad and watch them grow into skilled and competent shinobi. Those types of thoughts brought him to think about a certain blonde-haired Jinchuriki. He had been the first to watch over him due to the fact that he was the only one in the village that could help maintain the demon fox's chakra. Unlike many of his colleagues, he knew the truth about the boy and also realized he wasn't the fox itself. His captain at the time had wanted to adopt the boy, but the council of advisors had refused the notion. They took it one step further and threatened that if he tried anything, they would strip him of his rank. Ironically, a few days later, he quit the ANBU and had himself reinstated as a jonin, much to the council's irritation. The fallout cost them a living legends enrollment in the ANBU. They still told him to stay away and made every ANBU member report him in case he tried to associate with the QB brat. They even went as far as threatening execution, and by the time he was cleared by the Sandaime to adopt him, the damage had been done. Then, that dreadful night on his 7th birthday, The villagers went too far with what they did to the boy. He wanted to save him, but his captain at the time told him that they couldn't interfere due to orders of the council's advisors. The Hokage was out of the village attending a ceremony in Lightning Country then and was gone with 20 of the Leaf's best ANBU, Jonin, and Chunin, including his former captain, courtesy of the council. He himself was included in the escort, so he, the Hokage, and his ex-captain hadn't been able to watch over the boy, and when they returned, his thoughts were interrupted when the sound of a loud, incredibly girlish shriek came from somewhere within the market district. A small smile crept upon his face as he immediately guessed who was responsible for the poor soul that was screaming bloody murder, because he was foolhardy enough to mess with an abused and pissed-off 17-year-old, who had the power to utterly destroy them all. Things were going just like Toby predicted. Welcome back Kyubi Jinchuriki. Flashback 12 years ago. Everything was quiet in Konohagaku no Sado, or the village hidden in the leaves. After all, it was the dead of night. Villagers and shinobi alike were sleeping soundly, save for the few ANBU who patrolled the village. Yes, it was all quiet, except for one boy screaming into the night. The boy was 5-year-old Uzumaki Naruto, who was currently running for his life. Once again, for an unknown reason, a small mob of Konoha residents decided to take their anger out on him. He would have made it out fine, had it not been for the few shinobi who joined them. Naruto winced as several shuriken embedded themselves in his back and legs. He merely tore them out and kept running. A few shuriken would be the least of his problems if he allowed himself to be caught. Demon! A voice screamed from the crowd. Others joined him, calling the boy a devil or demon spawn. Finally, an old lady's voice called out, "Die, you fucking monster!" Naruto felt rocks begin to pelt him, as the few shinobi had run out of shuriken to bombard him with. Naruto thought bitterly, there's my favorite name. Idiots, why can't they leave me alone? The boy continued running, turning into an alley. Much to his misfortune, a chunin in the mob blurred through hand seals. Doton, Doryahiki. The small boy didn't see as mud flew out of the chunin's mouth, flowing rapidly past him and forming a wall of earth that created a dead end. Naruto ran to the newly formed obstacle and started pounding on it in vain, praying it would break. "Come on, you stupid wall, you're gonna get me killed," the boy yelled, pounding on the hardened mud wall. Naruto jumped as he felt something massive brush by his head, missing his left ear by inches. He stepped back and saw a Fuma shuriken. Naruto looked at the mob not 20 feet from him. "What is wrong with you people?" he yelled angrily. Some people in the crowd had the nerve to laugh. Their laughs were hollow and evil, doing nothing to quell his fear. "Oh, there's nothing wrong with us, demon. You see, you've been allowed to live for far too long. We've stabbed you, burned you, bludgeoned you, and even poisoned you. But you keep living." A man with a butcher's smock and large knife stepped up. "You've managed to survive us this long, monster. Now you're gonna die." "I don't think even a demon can live without his head." Several chunin threw their remaining shuriken at him. The bloodied and cut boy knew he would survive them, until they formed a cross-shaped seal. Kage shuriken no jutsu. Naruto could only watch as the few shuriken became hundreds, filling any empty space in the alley. He was as good as a human dartboard. The Uzumaki crouched down, bringing his knees to his chest and shielding his head with his forearms. "Ah!" Naruto yelled as he felt metal slice into his body. Miraculously, his torso and head were fine, but his arms and legs looked more like pincushions. He cried while tearing the shuriken out, causing him to bleed profusely. Red chakra began to seep out, healing his wounds quickly. After a few seconds, the boy looked unharmed. Completely exhausted, but unharmed. The mob looked at him in horror. "You see," a chunin yelled, "he truly is a demon. No human could heal themselves that quickly, not even the slug Sannin, Tsunade." More cries echoed out for the boy's blood. "Kill him, Sandame's law be damned, we'll be heroes." The mob advanced on him, ready to kill. Naruto tried to move, but found himself bound by a shadow. Shikoku Nara, member of the shadow-manipulating Nara clan, had his hands in a seal. His Kage main no jutsu made anything his shadow touched mimic his actions. Unfortunately for Naruto, he was the target. The Nara spread his arms out, forcing Naruto to mimic him. Naruto stood as if attached to an invisible crucifix. "Good work, Shikoka," a large, round man said, patting his shoulder with a beefy paw. The man had a wild mane of hair and wore samurai-esque armor. The man's tiny, hateful eyes glared daggers into the boy. "This is for the Akimichi clan, monster, Buben Baika no Jutsu." Chocho Akimichi's fist began to grow the size of the boy's chest and began delivering vicious blows to the defenseless boy's torso. Naruto screamed out in pain as he felt his ribs being broken and mended just as quickly. His red chakra was working overtime to keep the boy in stable condition. After what felt like an eternity, the giant ceased his pummeling, pleased with himself. As the Akimichi left, a man with long blonde hair passed him. "Hello Gaki, my name is Inosuke Yamanaka. My clan specialized in jutsu involving the mind. Let's see how much a demon like you can take." More pain flooded the already beat boy, this time in his head. He tried to grab his head but his body was still stuck due to the Nara. "Does it hurt, boy? Does it hurt like all those people you killed?" the man yelled. "Stop it. I didn't kill anyone. I'm just a kid, Naruto pleaded. Inosuke frowned. Of course you did, demon. You destroyed half the village. He focused more killing intent on the boy, magnifying the mental torture he was going through. I didn't kill anyone. I swear. Lies, a woman screeched. Naruto vaguely saw a flash of dark blonde hair before the woman began stabbing him rapidly. This is for my brother and my son. With each word, she stabbed him harder. She finally grabbed the boy by the hair and slashed his throat. Blood spilled out from the boy's chest and throat. Pain flooded the Uzumaki. Naruto used the last of the air in his lungs to scream in agony. I've done it, the woman yelled, her eyes wide like a lunatic. I've killed the Kyuubi. The Haruno clan will be famous once again. Everyone will love me and my Sakura. I win, Kushina. Not you. Me. You use you or I won. The woman fell to her knees, hugging herself and smiling an insane grin. The crowd erupted in cheers. The boy felt his consciousness slip away. When he awoke, he was in a sewer, standing next to giant metal bars that sealed part of the room off and shrouded it from view. Back again, kid? A demonic voice shook the room. A 4-story tall demon slowly made itself visible. It's not my fault. There was a Nara and that bitch Haruno killed me. You aren't dead, merely unconscious. You'll awaken soon, much to the mortal's displeasure. So if I'm not dead now, probably a Hyuga or someone will finish me with a jukin to the heart. The fox let out a laugh. I think not, kid. After all, whether they know it or not, that clan is still in the debt of my father. Without him or his lineage, there would be no Byakugan. Just like how without the sage, there would also be no Sharingan, Naruto stated. It looks like you aren't as dumb as I thought. Excellent. I will not tolerate a weak vessel. So, while we are waiting for me to wake up, I have a few questions for you, Kyuubi-sama. Kyuubi once again roared his laughter. Such humility is unlike you and your kind, Kit. The Uzumaki just looked at him, stoic. You have lived for thousands of years and are the most feared entity in existence. You have my respect for that, and my thanks for healing me, Kyuubi-sama. Very well. However, what happened to the loud dobe? Always spouting that he wanted to be Hokage and other senseless babble. Naruto looked sad at this, and hung his head. It was an act. I thought that if I failed and acted weak, the beatings would stop. Instead, they've gotten worse. They think I can't defend myself. They think I'm weak. Illusion is a necessity to the shinobi, Kit. You should embrace that fact. Naruto shook his head. It's not that I don't, but I don't have anything to back that up. Yugaone is barely around anymore because of her missions and Nisan has been out of the village for some time. No. I won't be weak. I won't give up. I will become strong. So strong that no one will in this village will be able to hurt me again. How, Kit? They hate you and will try to erase your existence. They will make you more than just a bad memory. I will never be a memory. Their hatred will not stop me from living my life. I will choose my own way, not what this village believes I am. So what, you want to be the Hokage? The Kyuubi asked, chuckling to itself, observing the boy's actions, inwardly delighted as he saw the boy visibly blanch at the thought. This village can rot for all I care. I will forge my own path, become the strongest and greatest Shino no warrior alive. He proclaimed with a strong determination in his eyes, causing the ancient fox to chuckle. The upcoming years will certainly be interesting indeed. Kit, the demon said seriously, you've made an oath, something we Bija and demons, especially Kitsune, do not take lightly. Protect them with your life. The Kyuubi looked toward the ceiling. You'll be leaving soon. Naruto looked livid. But I didn't even get to ask you a question, he yelled. Naruto could feel his presence dissipating. He had maybe a minute. You may ask one thing, and I swear on my honor I will answer truthfully. After looking at the fox and seeing no trace of deception, Naruto eased. Thank you? I want to know why you attacked Konoha and who my parents were, if you have the information. You are in luck, Kit, I know both. To answer the first, I was ripped from your mother's seal, as I resided inside of her as my second Jinchuriki, and controlled by a man who claimed to be Uchiha Madara. The fox spat the name with so much hatred that Naruto could have practically tasted it. Second, your father was Namake's Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, and your mother was Uzumaki Kushina. How do you know? The blonde asked, his body slowly fading away. Simple. When one so powerful is defeated, one wishes to know the name of their opponent. Besides, I practically raised your mother. With that, Naruto faded away. The first thing Naruto felt was the antagonizing pain he was in. He checked his body for wounds, but found none. That didn't help the blinding agony he felt. He stood up, seeing the mob walking away with their backs turned. Naruto figured that his conversation had taken up maybe a minute of real time. I'll remember my promise, Kyuubi-sama. And I'll no longer be the dobe. The last known Uzumaki stood up, tearing the remains of his blue shirt off. It would only hinder him. The boy was clad in nothing but black shinobi pants and black sandals. Naruto felt oddly calm. It was as if he knew, for the first time in his life, he would be safe from harm. He stared at the mob, his eyes focusing on their retreating forms. "Hey," Naruto said in a deathly calm voice, causing the mob to freeze, "aren't you forgetting about me?" The mob stood in shock, seeing the boy standing alive and well. "How are you still alive, you fucking monster?" Inosuke spat, advancing on him. "You obviously need some more of my technique." The Yamanaka made a hand seal. Naruto's eyes flashed open for a moment, before retaining their determined expression, never noticing the red tint his eyes and hair started to take. The Yamanaka felt the familiar feeling of his soul being drawn into another's mind, where he could destroy it. There was a brilliant flash of white light, and then, shockingly, a demonic laugh. The mob smirked in sadistic glee, waiting for the screams of pain to come from the blonde, only for their blood to run cold, when a dark smile appeared on Naruto's face. Inosuke landed with a small splash in an unknown area and looked around his mind, not remembering this. It was dark, impossibly dark, and it stunk, almost as bad as the Inuzuka kennels. Not being deterred from justice, in his mind, he continued walking through the darkness. "I've never seen a mind this dark in all my years, nothing less from a demon." The Yamanaka walked blindly before walking into a metal pole. He looked up from the ground, only to see giant steel bars. On the outside, he could see torches lining Naruto's sewer-like mind. "It looks like I'm in some kind of cage. Perhaps it's a mental precaution," he asked himself. He attempted to walk through the wide openings in the bars, only to find himself being thrown back by an invisible force. "This doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to keep me locked in here." Then it hit him like a sledgehammer. "Unless I'm not the one being kept in." He slowly turned around, only to meet a cold nose. Inosuke felt his stomach drop and filled with absolute terror. "I'm in the Kyuubi's cage." Red eyes opened in front of him and rows of giant white teeth began visible as the creature grinned. "Very good, mortal, you are indeed as brilliant as your clan presents itself to be," Kyuubi said sarcastically. "I would have never believed the kid to be so intelligent. And to think," Kyuubi put on a fake touch voice, "he even remembered it's been so long since I had a meal. You might be all skin and bones, but you're better than nothing." The man trembled. "Please don't eat me. I'll be good. I promise. I won't do any more to him." Kyuubi gave a harsh, barking laugh. "Ha ha ha, ignorant whelp, you bastards are even worse than some demons and devils I know. Now, I suppose I should tenderize my meat first." Kyuubi brought a paw down on the man about a dozen times. His screams of pain and agony was like music to the giant fox's ears. Inosuke lay broken on the wet jail floor. "Still alive? How perfect. I always like my meals to scream." Kyuubi licked his muzzle, before devouring his prey from the feet up. Slowly, outside of Naruto's mind, a few seconds after Inosuke had finished his jutsu, he let out a blood-curdling scream. Naruto watched in indifference as a loud snapping noise was heard as he fell to the ground, never to move again. Naruto raised his right hand. No. A wild wind began to form in the alley as a dark red energy, unlike any chakra ever felt, and for some of the shinobi, more insidious than Kyuubi's own, lightly funneled around Naruto's body. "I am not the dope you believe me to be. I won't be your fool, nor your punching bag anymore." The wind picked up, causing the villagers in the mob to be pushed slowly backwards. The shuriken that were stuck in the mud wall were shaking. The rocks in the alley slowly began to move. A dull roar of harsh wind echoed in the alley. "What is this wind?" a random chunin cried. "The hell with it." He grabbed a large shuriken on his back and threw it. He watched in triumph as it flew towards the boy. "Die, demon!" The boy merely kept his palm out and concentrated, causing the dark energy to stop it. The shuriken hovered, the points facing away from the blonde. With a flick of his wrist, the shuriken flew back, hitting the man sideways and throwing him and several others out of the alley. The blonde looked in shock as his body acted on instinct. "It's like my body's acting on its own." The wind picked up to such a degree that even the sparse shinobi in the remaining crowd had to focus chakra into their feet to keep standing. The mob looked at the boy in fear. "Run," the Haruno yelled, having stuck around by holding onto a Kimichi Chocho. "The demon will murder us all." The shinobi around them seemed to share her sentiment, and even the Nara and Akimichi left in a poof of smoke. The wind in the alley died down. Naruto felt dizzy and exhausted. He felt darkness overcome him, but not before asking himself one question. How did I do that? If he would have listened carefully, he would have heard the words of the Kyuubi. The Satsui no Hado burns bright in you, young one. Will you run from the power like so many others? Will you let the power warp your mind and destroy it like so many others? Or will you rise up and do what not even your own mother could not fully do? Master the intent and retain your humanity? Only time will tell me if you will be worthy of being my true successor and give me the challenge I've waited millenniums for. I will invest a lot of time in you, kid, don't disappoint me." The fox mused before settling himself back down to take a nap. He would need his rest. He had a kit to break in the wonders of training. Present day/day 2 of Konoha return. "Kit, kit, kit! Off your ass and on your feet!" boomed the older, deeper voice attempting to wake the Namikaze boy. Said boy groaned as lifted his head off his pillow, wiping the small line of drool from his lips, and turned his head towards the little dark red fox that was sitting on its hinds at the end of his bed. "You know that I sometimes suffer with insomnia. It's still dark outside. The academy doesn't start until 10, And yet you wake me up at 4:30. He whispered in annoyance, voice getting higher the more words he say. Oh, I'm so sorry, Naraheim, I didn't know you were in need of more beauty rest. The Red Fox sneered telepathically with more of an insult than sarcasm. Naruto scowled at the insult but said nothing as of now. He was woke up every morning the same way and he grown used to it, but still he loved to make fun of his tenant, the Kyubi no Yuko. Known to be powerful enough to destroy mountains with a flick of one of his tails, reduced to nothing but being an annoying mother hen, he said with a smirk, knowing it would piss the fox off. And piss off it did if the dozen tick marks appeared on its head. And just for that you can wear triple the weights today. Kyubi countered with a grin growing as the boy's smirk vanished instantly. Now move so we can be done in at least 4 hours, then we'll spar with the kittens until we have fun at the academy, as he smiled evilly. A light sigh left the Jinchuriki's mouth, as he remembered his old days at the academy as Dobe Naruto Uzumaki. The small obnoxious child who always craved for even the smallest bit of attention, and even went as far as to pull pranks and be a loud hyperactive idiot in an orange jumpsuit. Then his choice in girls was fawning over a pink-haired fangirl who fawned over a pampered raven-haired prick with a superiority and inferiority complex. He shuddered at the memory when he used to ask her for dates all the time, and tried to gain her approval when all she did was belittle him and discourage him. He looked the other way and watched the 2 sleeping women that also occupied his bed. One was the lightly snoring Yujito, whose head rested on his left shoulder, as she only slept in an oversized t-shirt that belonged to him, and a pair of black boy shorts that showed little to the imagination. The other was a woman who was tall, though nowhere near as tall as him, with chocolate-colored skin and dark purple hair. He then noticed she was naked, and his eye widened a little, taking in her near-flawless skin, large breasts with dark and neatly trimmed patch of hair above her womanhood. The purple-haired woman's eyes fluttered open, showing him her beautiful yellow-colored slitted orbs, and she spotted him staring. She gave him one of those saucy grins of hers she knew he loved so much. Naruto was everything she had ever wanted in a man: brave, strong, and good in the bedroom. Something that she thoroughly enjoyed during her second trip around the sun. She had been greatly disliked by most of her clan in her past life, her mother being the only exception. The elder woman had practically given birth to a clone of herself. They were so alike in personality. A woman who was wild and rebellious in a clan that was generally calm, peaceful, and unassuming. Due to this, she had not been able to find a man that fit exactly what she was searching for until now. A powerful and strong-willed warrior who was also kind and caring and compassionate. She had expected to never find the man she was looking for. A man of opposites. Caring and compassionate to those precious to him, indifferent to most of the normal populace, yet ruthless and utterly unforgiving to those who truly could not be redeemed, while playful and serious when appropriate. Dominating yet submissive when it called for it. She couldn't help but smirk at that last thought. Naruto could utterly dominate her in all things, even in a fight, if it truly came down to it. Yet when she wanted him to submit, he would simply submit because that's what she wanted. The one thing she had always looked for but never found in any of her past lovers was the ability to keep up with her. Naruto had blown her out of the water with that one. He could fuck her till she passed out. He'd done so on one occasion when she mocked him about it. She couldn't find the will in her to regret it. Although she was livid about it, while he didn't seem to mind, much to her annoyance. There, however, was one quality that the reincarnated Bija had never looked for but found in Naruto that made her believe she could very well fall in love with him. He approached everything with an almost childlike wonder. It didn't matter if he'd done it before, everything was fun and exciting to him. This added a whole new aspect to her sex life with the young blonde. She knew as a woman, especially of Bija status, who could live for thousands of years, that sex lives were non-existent among older beings, as there was nothing new they could do. Naruto was different though. Everything, even if they had done the same before, he approached with a passion, interest, and dedication as if it were their first time. The woman suddenly realized one thing above all else. Even if she didn't love him, she knew that she would never have nor ever want another lover than her blonde-haired fox. Naruto cocked his head to the side as the woman spaced out. It was odd for her. He shook his head to help clear his thoughts. He had to get ready. Naruto tried to get up, but the woman was holding him down. I need to get up, you know, Nibi-chan, she smiled and curled up on him much like a cat. No, you don't, since I'm very comfortable here. And I told you to not to call me that anymore. She murmured, only to feel his weight vanished from under her, gaining a small whine from the Nika woman. Yujito simply slept on. I gotta go, Yorichi, I'll see you later. He shot a look at the second, still sleeping Yujito. She was really tired, so let her sleep for another 3 hours, then have her meet me on the roof. Yorichi sighed with a bit of frustration and amusement. Boss lady wants some help with the newest crackpot scheme she came up with later, so I don't know when I'll be back. Naruto mumbled in thought, wondering what boss lady had in mind. Okay, I'll see you whenever then. He pouted a bit before it brightened in a mischievous grin. Have fun. Bye. Naruto left and began to leisurely stroll towards a training ground. While walking, he decided to devote some time to think about what happened yesterday. He smirked as he remembered the meeting with the council. Flashback location, Hokage Tower. Time, 6:45 p.m. Naruto and his entourage were being escorted to the room where all of Konoha's clan heads and civilian council were having a meeting. It seems after Naruto's little stunt with the villager pissed off and scared a lot of people, and they were immediately asking for his execution. The Hokage denied the notion and said it was on account of self-defense, and that the man didn't have the right to attempt to attack a boy who wasn't even a ninja, stating it was a dispute between two civilians. Many tried to argue but was instantly silenced when the old Hokage started emitting killer intent that would make a herd of elephants piss on themselves. Yelling and screaming could still be heard down the hall as they walked up but was stopped abruptly by the impressive amount of killer intent they were feeling behind the door, but none were affected by pressure. Well, the old man has a set after all. That or he is making a show in order to prove to me that he is looking out for my best interest, and thus Konoha's interest. Naruto thought with a barely noticeable smirk. The door opened to the room and was amused how many hidden and visible ANBU guards and jounin were in the room, so I presume Naruto's little demonstration got some of the populace nervous. It may get a little messy here after all, Cloud thought as his eyes put on a little edge to the crowd like a lion staring at his prey. They were directed to stand in the middle of the room where they would stand in the center of all the council podiums. Naruto looked at most of the different people in the room to his head to analyze everyone and gauge their facial expressions. From what he was seeing, he could tell that most of the civilians still looked at him with hatred and disgust in their eyes and faces. The clan heads were either impassive, sleeping, guess who, or all smiles on their faces, especially the woman with the 2 red marks running down her cheeks, which was more of a seductive smile. Minato, clan head of the Inuzuka, and at once was a love interest of his father. But that's another story for another time. She winked once to confirm his assumption as he winked back, causing her to slightly blush. Aerith turned her head to stare at Cloud, who had the decency to look away. Naruto stopped his fun, and his gaze drifted to a man who gave him an emotionless stare. His white robe as well as his pupilless eyes reminded him of an old classmate, so the blonde knew for a fact that this man was a Hyuga. Hayashi Hyuga, if he remembered correctly, as he was told and read about him. He stares back just as impassive as the clan head, as both of their eyes slightly narrowed as a small amount of ki could be felt in the room. His gaze or the ki didn't go unnoticed by Yujito, so she slowly started to step in front of Aerith, only to get a kunai placed by her neck by a bearded jounin with a cigarette in his mouth. "Don't you dare move, bitch!" The jounin barked, or ILL. "Or you'll what?" A feminine voice said the side of him. He slowly glanced over to notice the same girl he held the kunai against now at the side of him with a curved kunai at his crotch. Most of the other participants in the room could not even follow her movement at all. Movement like that hasn't been seen since the days of the Yondaime. Amazing. I could barely follow her movement, Sarutobi thought in surprise as he glanced over at another corner of the room and noticed that one of his elite jounin has put his orange book away and lifted his headband from over his left side of his face, showing his crimson-colored left eye with 3 tomos in it, and started swirling. That speed! That power! With her and the Kyuubi brat under my influence, I can take over this village and next the world, a bandaged old man thought with an evil glint in his eye. Now I would suggest you don't make any more moves like that or I might flinch. Then you're going to need a needle and thread to sew up those peas you call balls. Yujito purred, which made the man sweat and fear for his manhood. I like this girl, a purple-haired woman in a tan trench coat thought with a warped smile. She's as scary as Anko. Many of the men in the room thought in unison, and sweat dropped when they looked at said woman's smile. Now I believe that won't be necessary, Yujito-san. Asuma, if you all please stand down and return to your posts, for I know they will mean no harm. Hirozen, Sarutobi said in more of a commanding tone. The man scowled but nodded and walked toward the wall while all the ANBU members disappeared, swirls of leaves sticking to the shadows. Naruto started to really observe and identify the people in the room. He had studied the ninja and civilian ID books of every major and minor village from the Shodai era to the latest bingo books, so he had vivid knowledge of every person from name, rank, who belonged to what clan, and which ninja was considered a threat to him if it ever was a possibility. To his knowledge, there needed to be at least 13 members in the council, excluding the Hokage, who had the final word in any issue. He turned his head to notice that the elders of the council, minus Sarutobi, were staring at him contempt. The one with the cane and bandage was staring with an evil aura that brought a flash of anger in him, but buried it as fast as it came. Kyuubi suggested killing him, but that would bring more problems, for now at least. He was a patient man. His vision turned back to the civilian members of the council, who looked at him with utter disgust and hatred. He stared back with indifference intentionally, which made a few snarls be heard until he narrowed his eyes dangerously on one of them, in which wasn't missed by any of the other occupants in the chamber, who he couldn't help but shoot her. A large concentrated blast of ki that she only felt, which in turn made her take a sharp breath and stare back at him with pure terror. He didn't care if they hated him. If they were too ignorant to know the difference from the jailed and jailer, then that was them. He will never forget that night until the day he dies. Actually, he should thank them, for they made him who he was now. But that one councilwoman who vowed on it the day that he left, she will die. Finally, there were the shinobi council that consisted of the major clan heads. There was Minato, who was still flirting with him with her eyes, of the Izuzuka clan, and Noichi Yamanaka of the Yamanaka clan, Hayashi Hyuga, who was still staring intently at him, of the Hyuga clan, Chusa Akimichi of the Akimichi clan, Shikaku Nara, who looked half asleep, of the Nara clan, and Shibi Aburame of the Aburame clan, who looked like an Aburame. They all seemed to acknowledge him and his entourage one way or another. His musing was stopped when he heard the old Kage's voice. I called this meeting today to discuss something of great importance that will affect the village in the future. Before that, Hokage-sama, we need to kill that monster now before he can repeat his crime 10 years ago, said the rather upset civilian council member who Naruto just shot the KI to, not remembering the feeling she just felt. And what would that crime be? Responded a annoyed, slowly turning furious Sarutobi. That vile demon spawn caused the imprisonment of more than 50 innocent villagers and shinobi, a dark blonde-haired woman almost shouted. And he manipulated Itachi Uchiha to massacre the entire clan in retaliation. Also, he attacked an innocent civilian. You know perfectly well that it was the people who started it. Because as I remember it correctly, you had a front row seat, Hiruno, and I dare you to call him a demon one more time, or I will see to your public execution personally because of you breaking my law, thundered Sarutobi, all the while emitting a massive amount of killer intent that even scared his former teammates. Shikaku Nara actually sat up straight, eyes wide. Oh fuck, he's pissed. In the world of shinobi, there are several little facts that anyone learns quickly. One is that one doesn't become a Kage without being the strongest, most powerful ninja in the village, and secondly, that being in the same room as an angered Kate meant one of few things. Someone was either going to be demoted, killed, spending the next few years either performing deranked missions or recovering from the most severe beating of their life in intensive care. From the look on the Sandame's face, it looked like all of the above was about to be added to the ever-growing list. After taking some deep breaths and calming down, the Hokage continued, as far as the innocent villager, I have reports from ANBU that he attacked first, and his very disturbing defeat was brought down upon himself. This brought a few snickers from various people in the room. Yeah, he was being troublesome and he was turned into a lollipop, as the reports say, Shikaku Nara adding his 2 cents, in which brought more chuckles from the shinobi side of the council, while the civilians glared at the Nara. And while the intentions of the Uchiha massacre are still unknown till this day, there is no way he could influence anyone if he wasn't even in the village at the time and hasn't been in the village since the incident that involved him. Where has the Uzumaki child been then for the past decade then? Questioned the elderly council man named Hamura. Away with his family? Sarutobi replied, with many of the civilian council were in an uproar. And before anyone asked any more details, I've labeled the detailed of S-class importance that will not be talked about, as well as what the rest of what we will be talking about. Failure to comply will be looked at as an act of treason and the offender will be executed immediately. Which shut them up immediately. With that said, it seemed like the atmosphere in the room was getting thicker with every passing second. Hokage-sama, can I ask something? The bandaged advisor asked. Yes, what is it, Danzo? Who are these other 3 individuals? He asked while pointing towards Cloud, Aerith, and Yujito. Yes, where are my manners? These 3 are actually relatives of Naruto, and before any more questions are asked, I'll explain it all real soon, Sarutobi said. Danzo didn't like how the Hokage tried to dodge fully answering the question completely, but reluctantly nodded his head in acknowledgement. First, I would like to fully welcome the Uzumaki clan to the Leaf Village as an active clan. This set another major uproar in the council. Why should we let that thing and his pack of misfits join the like of the Leaf, especially as a clan? The elder council advisor said, known as Koharu. Because unlike you, we have much value and much to contribute to this village rather than being a figurehead with no actual political power, you old tree-humping bitch. Aerith countered with venom laced in her voice, which surprised everyone in the room, due to her kind-looking features. That was mild compared to what I thought she was going to say. Cloud thought with wide eyes, and I thought I was bold. I might have to get to know her a little better and make her my new drinking buddy. Kurenai can be a lightweight sometimes. Anko thought with a smirk. Bitch shows some respect to the council. The only thing I see useful for is breeding material, a civilian councilman said with a leer. Not a second later he was lifted off the ground by the throat and was face to face with the frowning Cloud. Let me make this clear and listen carefully because I'm only going to repeat this once. He growled out while tightening his grip on the man's throat, rewarding him with the sounds of the man choking. If you or anyone else in this village ever disrespects my wife again, I'll show you this trick I know with a spoon, a paperclip, and a mouse. He spat darkly with murder in his eyes, emitting even more killing intent than the Hokage was earlier. The councilman pissed himself and fainted from the lack of air. All of the shinobi were in awe of the amount of killing intent he emitted, while the civilians were in fear for their lives, hoping he didn't decide to make one of them another example. Cloud dropped the limp body back in his chair disgusted and stepped back beside Aerith, who had a warm smile. Wife? Here? She leaned and whispered in his ear. He glanced at her and with a light blush he scratched the back of his head that told her automatically that he was nervous. The sound of Hiruzen clearing his throat snapped everyone out of their stupor as he wanted to get down to business. As I was saying before the interruption, we are here today to inform the council that the old Uzumaki clan will be re-establishing itself in Konoha. For those who may not know, the Uzumakis were recognized as the world's best kenjutsu masters, Fuin masters, as well as living longer lives than your average person. They were so skilled with the arts that even the legendary Hanzo of the Salamander commended them and hired them as personal guards for some time. He now had everyone's full attention, so he continued. The clan originated in the country of Whirlpool and were considered royalty, as they ran the entire country even before Konoha was ever formed. Yes, now that I think about it, I did hear of the clan from a friend long ago. It was said that the Uzumakis had very large chakra reserves 4 or 5 times larger than a normal shinobi and genetically were considered the perfect weapons once they learned to harness it. Hayashi Hyuga added. Why is he trying to defend me? He wants something and it's only a matter of what, thought Naruto. Seems like you're making allies already. Naruto-kun, the old Hokage, thought, inwardly smiling. That is correct, Hayashi. The Uzumakis were formidable opponents to go up against because they were never the ones to get tired as easily as a regular shinobi would, so they could battle for days and not be completely wiped out from exhaustion. But during the war they were said to have been whipped out along with the entire country by the joint efforts of IWA, Kumo, and Kiri during a frontal assault. Unknown to anyone, a sole Uzumaki was residing here in Konoha since she was a genin, oblivious to the fact she was the last living Uzumaki. As time progressed she became one of the most talented kunoichi in the leaf since the day of Tsunade Sunju of the legendary Sannin. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki, which many of you knew her as the Red Death or Red Hot-Blooded Habanero. Involuntarily every male in the room shuddered a little bit at the second nickname. A few audible gasps from many of the room, while others had contemplative looks on their faces, while one in particular thought the whole meeting would be just too troublesome. Hiruzen inwardly smirked at the many of the councilmen's facial expression, especially the elder advisor Danzo, who had a look like he just swallowed a lemon. He would note that for later, but hell, he was on a roll, and so he continued. News came later of the destruction of the whirlpool, and she was devastated and became an even powerful force as vengeance and sorrow consumed her entire being. At times she would be able to slaughter a 30-man squad by herself without so much as a scratch. Within her sorrow she actually was saved by a man who she soon fell in love with. With his knowledge he advised that she should rebuild her clan and lay the foundation for the Uzumaki in Konoha for further generations. Hokage-sama, interrupted Danzo. Sarutobi continued, intentionally ignoring Danzo. Before she married the man she got an approval from the council to re-establish the clan, but it was notion that it would take 5 years as tradition to the leaf that any clan can establish, so that loyalty is proved and no possibility of an early coup d'etat. 1 year later the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. She was injured early in the attack. Unknown to many she was actually pregnant in the attack and was forced into premature labor. He glanced over at Naruto and seen that his head was slightly down. It pained him to see the sadness in him, but this was what needed to be done in order to secure Konoha's future. Naruto was reliving the actual visions of that night. Kyuubi had given him access to his earliest memories of the night of his birth. He knew that he was used to separated his father from his mother by that bastard puppet Uchiha. He knew that both his parents helped each other with the sealing. He knew his father was okay with dying, but his mother wasn't having it. She wasn't leaving him alone. He knew that his parents loved him unconditionally, and made plans should any of the villagers find out of his status. His father gave Sarutobi instructions to not let the village know he was a Jinchuriki. He cleared his head of those thoughts and continued to listen to Sarutobi. Though she gave birth to a healthy baby boy known now to be one Naruto Uzumaki, she decided to go back into battle despite her condition. She was said to have died an hour later due to the wound and blood loss from also the child birthing, as it proved too much even for her body to handle. Her body was not found, as it was said that the Kyuubi may have trampled it. Her husband was utterly destroyed of the loss of his wife, but could not dwell in the sorrow as he had to protect the village from the demon. What? How could I have not seen it sooner? Thought an angry and guilty Anko. Danzo tried again. Hokage-sama, if you would listen to me. In a moment, Danzo. Many do not know, but Bijou can't be killed, only contained in the body of a newborn, so in order to save the village, the man made a pact with the Shinigami or death god to seal the beast into his only son, at the cost of his own life. Can any of you guess who the man was? Asked a smirking Sarutobi. Mostly every person, except for the obvious few, were wearing shocked expressions as revelations were now setting themselves in. That's right, the man, who is also Naruto's birth father, was Minato Namikaze, of whom many knew as the Yondaime Hokage, which also make him his sole heir as well. Absurd. You expect us to believe that this creature is the heir of Minato Namikaze? Shouted an enraged Danzo, who was now tired of being ignored. He was tossed a closed scroll by Sarutobi. You should learn to hold your tongue, Danzo, countered Naruto. Oh, and why is that dem? He tried to say before he was lifted a good 2 feet off the floor and began to grab at his neck and choke and behave like somebody was suffocating him. The counselors noticed that Naruto was moving his right hand as if he was squeezing something. Everyone that hasn't been around the boy lately were so shocked at this reaction they just sat there to watch it transpired. Some out of interest, but many out of pure fear. Here was a boy that was beaten all his life and never fought back, was now holding one of the most influential and respected men by his throat off the floor, not even touching him. His killing intent was so potent that it was nearly visible, though was higher than any of them ever felt. Even the Hokage was a bit unnerved by the boy's intent. But hey, he wasn't going to stop it yet. Naruto gave him a bored look before speaking. Because that man is the only one that is keeping you breathing right now. You not only were about to break the Sandaime's law, with the punishment it takes, but you also made it in front of him. It is brushing treason against our leader. If I was an active shinobi of the leaf, I would had to right to execute you right here and right now, but for starters now, before anyone could think, Yujito aimed her hands at 2 different corners of the room and shot giant red flames from her hands at those said corners. When they made contact, screams were heard as 2 bodies fell down from out the shadows and rolled around in a futile attempt to smother the flames out. Out of the corners that weren't attacked, 2 more figures came out with sword drawn in an attempt to take out the Kyuubi brat, only to be struck with a yellow light which looked like electricity, inches before they could reach him. The Shinobi Council and even Sarutobi showed faces of awe, while the civilian council could only look in horror as they watched the bodies spasm and convulse from the electric currents until movement stopped and they became completely still. The current left the dead bodies and slowly levitated towards a smirking Cloud who had his left arm extended while said arm was glowing yellow. Before anyone could ask, Naruto started talking again, as Danzo's floating form flew straight to him. Danzo was so close to his face that he was spitting on him when he spoke. I've read about you, Danzo. You used to run the root division of ANBU but was supposedly, pointing his thumb at the dead bodies, disbanded per the Sandame's law after he found out that you were stripping them of their humanity, turning them into your heartless puppets. Hoping to make another Itachi before my mother helped him gain back most of his humanity, you stripped from and the one that attempted to kidnap me while I was a baby so you could turn me into your precious little weapon. Luckily I was saved by 3 ANBU officers who I will keep anonymous for my own reasons. The old war hawk looked at the third, realizing the great mistake he made. The Hokage gave him an unpleasant look, but he needed to end this and asked Naruto and his family more questions later. It seemed the young Namikaze could read his mind, because at that time he brought the old man closer and whispered in his ear, "Your death will be coming soon, and when it comes, not even your secret root weapons or your stolen Sharingan and Mokuton can save you, that I swear on my father's ashes." He said in a whisper that promised death, actually bringing a sense of foreboding to the man when he mentioned too many secrets that only he himself and Orochimaru knew. The aura of malicious intent radiating from Naruto was palpable, so thick it could almost be tasted in the air. Naruto squeezed his hand with more strength, making the counselor's face turn purple and his visible eyes start to roll to the back of his head. "Naruto, that's enough. Release him," ordered Sarutobi. Naruto grunted, and as he threw Danzo back to his seat, silence filled the room until someone voiced a thought everyone was thinking other than just what had occurred. "How were you able to do that?" asked a shocked Tsum. Now Tsum-chan, you know it is very unethical for shinobi to reveal their clan secrets." Naruto answered in a mocking, scolding tone which made Tsum scowl and also fight down a small blush due to him adding the suffix chan to her first name, a suffix that usually got men's balls ripped off when they addressed her in such a way. "Well, can we ask, is there a name to what you have just done? Doing elemental attacks without hand signs is supposed to be unheard of. Even for the Riddiku Senin voice and astonished Hayashi, pure elemental manipulation is all you need to know. Now why don't you look at the scroll?" Cloud said, gaining the council's attention. No one liked his answer but didn't push the envelope any further, so to say. "What does the scroll say, Hokage-sama?" Hamura asked after getting over his stupor. "That scroll is Naruto's official birth certificate that states his biological parents are one Minato Namikaze and one Kushina Uzumaki. If you look closely, it has the seals of me, Minato, Kushina, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and even Hanzo of the Salamander. That alone is all the proof you need, and by law of the leaf, without any argument even from the Hokage. Naruto has the right to 2 seats on the council when he becomes of age, both sets of his family's assets, and sealed Namikaze compound that will also be proof that he is a Namikaze, due to the simple fact that the only way to enter the compound is from fresh Namikaze blood. Also, before the Yondaime died, he made a law that would be effective immediately once Naruto gained his heritage." "What law?" demanded Danzo, finally gaining his bearings on what just happened. "The law states that Naruto and his family, who are active ninja only, will have to answer to the Hokage and get political immunity because of the crimes committed upon Naruto and his political status as last Namikaze. In exchange, the family of them will have to stay with the forces of Konoha for the next 7 generations with the same privileges and obligations. Unless certain circumstances may occur, he is obligated to move both clans from Konoha as well as his inheritance." The Civiline Council could only sit and stare as their Hokage took every chance of taking advantage of this situation. Now they could just see what they could do about the demon. Maybe they can find a way of at least exiling him. At that moment, Hamura wanted to know exactly that. "I would like to ask who this cousin of his you spoke of earlier, and who are these people that accompanied him, and what connection do they have with him?" Again Sarutobi could only smirk. "Well, you see, the 3 of them, Cloud Uzumaki Namikaze, his wife Aerith Uzumaki Namikaze, and Naruto's older sister Yujito Uzumaki Namikaze have performed a familiar blood oath which gives them the newly earned privileges as Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Now if you would excuse me, I have a lot of work to do and a village meeting to organize. Nico and Fox, would you escort the Uzumakis to their living quarters?" With that, one happy Sandaime Hokage left the chambers, leaving behind one upset council. "Your legacy lives on, sensei," thought a certain Jounin after he puts his headband back over his crimson eye. "And I promise to do all within my powers to protect him, even if it goes against Konoha." Flashback end. Yesterday had been so mentally exhausting that they didn't even fully check the house he was rented by the Sandaime, though notices quickly that the entire apartment was practically laced with seals. He'd handle those later. Everyone just picked a vacant room and fell asleep. After Naruto was fully dressed, he figured not to bother the lovebirds on account that they may be still tired from last night. He snickered at the thought, and was glad he put a silencing seal on the door so he didn't have to hear their long discussion all night. "I can assume that there will be much shock, also I have to check on her, and make sure to remove that seal. I miss my little Snips." he thought as he stared at the still night sky. As he gazed at the moon, he could have almost swore that it had a light lavender color in its glow. He smiled as it brought him memories of a certain girl that became a good friend before all the craziness. She was one of the few people that he could be comfortable around, and with time on his hand he started to feel something. At the time he wasn't sure what this feeling was that made his heart race and his face hot, but he knew she was one of the only girls that made him feel that way. I can't wait to see you again either. She found herself standing in a nothingness. She frantically looked around for any form of life or even existence. Nothing but a void of emptiness as far as the eyes could take her, even with her Kekkei Genkai activated. Tears welled up in her lavender pupilless eyes and rolled freely down her face as realization finally took her, and she figured out where she was. This was where a certain blonde filled her heart and made her feel whole. This place was nothing but a mirror of the feeling. Naruto-kun was all that was on her mind and all she could think of for the past decade, ever since that faithful night he was took from her. A decade since a piece of her soul was ripped out of here. Why did the village hate him? Sure, he pulled pranks, but was that the reason to shun him and hurt him like they did? She just couldn't figure it out, and now she suffered for it. She would never see him again, and she never would tell him how she felt for him. I love you. The words sound nice to say, but without the one she loved to hear it, they were meaningless. Even though she was almost 17 years old, her heart did not tell her he was a simple crush or puppy love. Hinata Hyuga, the heir of the Hyuga clan, fell in love with Naruto Uzumaki, the orphan enigma, and told herself she would never fall in love again since he was gone from her life forever. Hinata, she heard a voice from afar that snapped her out her misery. It was soft, but it sounded very familiar to her heart. She noticed that there was some light coming from the direction that the voice came from. She didn't even feel her body move as it went on autopilot and started to run in the direction of the light. Hinata, the voice was louder, and now she knew that the voice was that of her beloved, Naruto Yuon. She screamed as she started to run faster than she ever thought she would as light started to engulf the void. Hinata-chan, listen. The voice said, which made her stop instantly. She remembered him saying that to her once. It was the first time he used chan in her name. That first time made her heart flutter, as hope in her heart was telling her that he was actually letting her into his life. Then all of a sudden the ground fell from under her, and she started to fall deep into the unknown. She panicked at first, but for some unknown reason to her she quickly became calm as she continued to descend into the unknown. She felt a hand touch hers and turned her head to see the boy she dreamt about marrying one day. He gave her his signature grin that made him look like a fox at times, which was so adorable, she always thought. She felt her face getting hot as a blush crept up on her cheeks and her nervousness starting to take over, trying her hardest not to faint. But wait, how could she faint if this is a dream? Naruto's face turned from cheery to a genuine smile that she had only seen once in her life, and that was. Tears started to well up in her eyes as she remembered that dreadful night. Why did the villagers go that far? Why did they cause so much suffering to an innocent little boy? She wished she could have turned back the hands of time and saved him from the horror he had to go through. Don't cry, Hinata-chan, it's okay, he said in a soothing tone. They came to a screeching halt and started to levitate in midair. Naruto pulled Hinata close in an embrace as their foreheads touched. Cerulean pools met lavender moons as she ran her fingers through his spiky blonde hair. Just as she was pulling back, he gently placed his hand in hers, entwining their fingers like intimate couple would do. The next 3 words shocked her to the very core, and if she was awake she would have fainted from the overload. Wait for me. The indigo-haired future Kunoichi's eyes shot open, her breathing becoming heavy as she jerked upward suddenly. For a split second she couldn't perceive what was real and what wasn't. After a moment to compose herself, she sighed as she remembered the contents of her dream. She didn't understand it at first, but the end she understood, and in her heart she felt that those 3 words were the truth. Naruto-kun, she thought as she felt a whimsical feeling brush through her. She hasn't felt this way in over a decade, and quite frankly, she missed the feeling that Naruto always gave her, even if it wasn't intentional, which it was her fault at that. Though a proud and strong soon-to-be ninja, her weakness is to talk to the boy of her dreams and actually stay conscious during the conversation. She laid in bed a few more moments, hugging the stuffed fox that reminded her of the blonde-haired Jinchuriki. Her blonde-haired Jinchuriki. Yes, she was well aware that the enigma known as Naruto Uzumaki was the container of Kyubi no Yoko, the 9-tailed fox. But she didn't care. To her it just meant that he was a hero and very strong, and more motivation becomes stronger as well. She cared about him much, and would want to protect him as he would her. His words, though a decade old, still hung fresh in her mind. You only see me for who I am, and also you are precious to me, Hinata-chan. I promise that I will come back stronger so I can protect you and my precious people, for that is my Nindo. She reminisced on that moment day before, wondering how much he has changed over the years, like she has. Hinata had grown quite beautiful between the age of 5 and 15. Her short indigo hair was now long and silky, trailing a little above her backside. Her once non-existent chests were now so big she had to wear a light purple sweater jacket all the time to avoid being stared at with mindless lust for the boys her age and some a little bit older. As she sat up in bed, she was currently dressed in a pair of comfortable, white silk panties and bra. When she was younger she was nowhere near as comfortable with her body as she was now, but she knew there was only one man she'd allow to touch her. Though nobody knew when he would come back or if he would even come back at all, Sometimes she hated herself for not being able to believe in him as much as she should, but she wanted to see that he was okay with her own eyes. Hinata began to sob slightly, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. "Forgive me for crying for your sake, Naruto-kun, but please come back to me, I miss you," she said to herself as she couldn't help but smile slightly for his sake, her tears dripping off her eyelids and landing on top her bed sheets. She hated those eyes, those cold, calculating, unemotional eyes, those eyes that looked down upon her, always measuring her progress like a weapon. She once loved those eyes. She loved them because it gave her a sense of security, of peace, of calm and happiness. It should have brought them closer since everyone in her family had them. It didn't. Instead, her family was divided in two factions, the servitors and the so-called superior branch. She hated those categorizations with a passion. Some say that the word hate and Hinata Hyuga in the same sentence was insane. They were nothing but asses. Her mother, her life center, disappeared. She died when her sister was born. However, no matter how much she wanted to hate her little sister, she couldn't. Because she saw the same fear in her little eyes. Because she loved her sister as much if not more than she loved her mother. She made a vow to change this clan. She made a vow on her mother's grave, in front of the sky, Kami-sama, the angels and all entities in this universe. Her sister, and her love became her reason to exist. She vowed to make her smile and laugh the same way her mother made her laugh when she was a child. She vowed to love Naruto, and help take away his pain that he had been holding all of his life, and she never went back on her promises like her beloved. She hated the fact that she had to grow so soon. Other children barely knew how to read and write. However, she was a Hyuga. She had the means, and all that was left was her spirit and determination. She was currently sparring with her father in one of their daily sessions, and the look of disappointment never left his face. After her mother's death, it looked like someone came and killed her father too, placing this unemotional, cruel puppet in his place. Did he blame her for his brother's death? For not defeating the Cloud Jonin the night she was kidnapped from her bedroom? She bit, clawed, drew blood and attempted to close his tenketsu points, but a hit from him was enough to knock her out. This man wasn't her father. She may call him that, but she never meant it. Her father was dead. Perhaps he was never alive to begin with. After being repeatedly put down by him with a few good juken hits, she finally snapped. She jumped back on her feet, ignoring the protest of her muscles, and attacked her father with anger, uncaring of the consequences. Hayashi's eyes widened slightly in shock seeing the look on her face. But he was unable to ponder her change because she was already upon him. She managed to close 5 points in his arm and almost ripped his left lung apart, making him swallow down his own blood before she felt binding pain in her chest just below her left lung and all over her ribs. Hanabi, who was sitting on the sides, had her eyes wide open. That was the first time she saw her father using the 8 trigrams 64 palms. She was also confused. Up until now she disregarded her sister as weak and a burden to the clan. So why did her father use that technique? Hayashi coughed his into left hand and narrowed his gaze at the blood that spattered in his palm, then at the crumpled form of his eldest daughter. "I expected you to do more better, however I think this is the extent of your abilities. Just like that Uzumaki trash, you will never amount to anything more than a Philo." "Shut up." This made all activity in the sparring hall stop. All the Hyugas in the dojo had shocked expressions on their normal, unemotional faces. The first being Niji and Hanabi, who had their mouths wide open. Her voice was above a whisper, but her tone was cold as ice, no trace of her normal stutter. Hayashi was quick to recover. "How dare you? This fight is far from over, father," she said the last word with so much venom that Niji's hair stood on his neck. "If you ever talk about Naruto Uzumaki like that ever again in front of me, I will kill you, father or not." Hayashi was red in the face. "You dare speak to me that way? I told you to stay down, Hinata. Don't embarrass me any further." His voice boomed all over the dojo. Hinata struggled to get on her feet. She was panting heavily. A stream of blood flew from her mouth. With great effort she got in the juken stance. "Did you remember what mother used to say, Hayashi-sama? The strength of a lioness will increase tenfold when cornered. I will show you who the real Hyuga prodigy is." She lifted her gaze and her father swore his heart stop. "I hate you, all of you." She hissed it with such a voice that her words cut like a knife through everyone. She dropped the stance and ran out the dojo. Nobody said anything. Niji was staring with shock at his feet, and Hanabi was trembling looking at the open door. She didn't know why she was crying. It was only Hinata after all. The Hyuga heiress entered her classroom in deep thought about the dream she had last night. What did it mean? She always had dreams about Naruto, but those included them hugging, kissing, dating, making love, whipped cream, horse saddles, eggs. She blushed furiously at her last thoughts, scolding herself into not thinking about things like that yet. But she was an almost 17-year-old virgin, and cold showers don't really work anymore. "Are you alright, Hinata-san?" A familiar stoic questioned. She was brought out of her thoughts by one of her classmates, sitting in front of her with a gray trench coat with a hood that covered most of his head, only showing his eyes, which were behind a set old sunglasses. "Why yes, I'm fine, Shinoku-and just have my mind on something, he." She laughed nervously, hoping he wouldn't question her any further. Luck was on her side as he just nodded and continued on to his seat as well. He was one of the only friends she had in the academy, though he was a little creepy at times. He always looked after her like an older brother would with their younger sister. Even though he is the heir of the Aburame clan, he acts just like a normal kid. Well, as in Aburame normal. Why? She always used to ask him, "I'm just doing what I can." And he would leave it at that. Now that she thought about it, her soon-to-be graduating class had many heir to major clans, and most of them don't let it affect them at all and act like normal kids. Shikamaru Nara of the Nara clan, who usually sleeps during class, while Chuji Akimichi of the Akimichi clan was steadily eating to his heart's content next to him. Kiba Inuzuka of the Inuzuka clan was an okay person at heart, but there were things that just bothered her about him. He was cocky and arrogant to a T, with a bigger ego than the entire Hokage monument. At times he would also stare at her like she was a piece of meat, which made her uncomfortable at times, and saying things like Naruto was a nobody when you can be with a major stud like me. That infuriated her to no end, and a jukin tap to his groin was what he received for his unnecessary comment. For a week it had hurt for him to pee. Her thoughts were interrupted when she heard shouting in the hallway, and a moment later the door flung open, showing two girls, one with pink hair and one with blonde hair, panting heavily and glaring at each other. "Ha! I win, Ino Pig! Now I get to sit next to my Sasuke-kun." The pink-haired girl named Sakura Harino shrieked so loud some of the classmates covered their ears to dull the oncoming headache they would be receiving. "The next time you call Sasuke-kun yours, I'll beat you into the ground, billboard brow," growled the blonde-haired girl named Ino Yamanaka, who was also the heiress of the Yamanaka clan. "How could you ever think Sasuke-kun would ever want to go out with a pig like you?" Ino's former best friend retorted. "You should just go to the local barn and eat some hay." "Pigs don't eat hay, you idiot." "Then they probably eat manure. That must be why they smell so much, just like you." "Billboard brow, Ino Pig. Billboard brow, Ino Pig. Can you two shut the hell up? Listening to your constant bickering is so troublesome," a bored voice said to the two arguing banshees. "Shut it, Shikamaru Baka. You're just jealous you're not wanted like we want Sasuke-kun," Sakura yelled, while the Sasuke Uchiha fan club shrieked in acknowledgement. "I think my ears are bleeding," many of the boys thought in unison. "Yeah, you're right. I'm jealous that I don't act like a emo brooding prick and have a bunch of useless fangirls chasing after me. However did you figure me out?" Shikamaru responded in the same bored tone with a hint of sarcasm. All the other boys snickered at the comment but stopped when they felt the killing intent aimed towards Shikamaru, though he ignored it completely. "What was that?" Ino replied menacingly. "Oops, did I accidentally tell the truth? I'm sorry, but aren't shinobi supposed to put duty before all other factors? Yet you constantly bicker about sitting next to a boy who shows he has no interest in you. Hell, he might even be gay." And just like a light switch, the killing intent disappeared and was replaced with dumbfounded expressions from most of the other classmates, everyone thinking around the same lines. "What the hell?" Ino felt a little bad as she considered her former friend's words, but it disappeared when Sasuke Uchiha walked through the classroom door. "Hi Sasuke Yuon!" All the banshee shrieked as he came in the door, while all the boys' face faulted anime style. Shikamaru shook his head while Hinata stifled a look of disgust. She had a huge distaste for fangirls, as they shamed all women, especially kunoichis. Of course she was infatuated with the boy, but she was her own person and never followed him with shallow tendencies like these fangirls. Pathetic in her eyes. Then came what she felt like the worst part of the day. Sasuke would walk up to her with an arrogant smirk on his face and stand in front of her. "Hello Hinata-chan. Have you decided to kneel before me like everyone else in this village does?" he said to her with a leer. He had did his every day since the Dobe's sudden disappearance 10 years ago. He knew for a fact that she had a crush on him since they started the academy, but he was too much of an idiot to see it. She chose to wait for the loser to pop up out of thin air when he knew he wouldn't be back. She was wasting her affections on him anyways, and should have been fawning over him like the rest do. The Hyuga heiress grew a little irate but swallowed it down at the constant gall of this arrogant so-called last Uchiha. She figured out why he was doing it, and it kept every fiber in her being to stop from attacking him herself. But even though he was an stuck-up snob with hair that looks like a cockatoo, he was still Rookie of the Year and one of the only few in the class that can beat her in a fight. She was interrupted from her thoughts at the sound of her teacher's voice. "Sakura and Ino, could you please get to your seats? You too as well, Sasuke." A man wearing a standard Leaf Village uniform with a scar across his nose said with authority. "Yes, Iruka-sensei," Sakura and Ino said in unison. Sasuke merely HN and continued walking after mouthing "We're not done yet" to the Hyuga heiress, and was answered with a low feral growl that only he heard. "Now I'd really like to introduce your new classmates. Come in, guys," Iruka said, gesturing someone outside the door to come in. With that, a blonde-headed girl entered the classroom, and just for a moment it felt like the temperature went up a few dozen degrees. But that moment was so short-lived that most of them thought they just imagined it. Her facial expression gave away no emotions, which in that itself made a few people feel a little uneasy. Even Iruka and his assistant Mizuki shifted uncomfortably. Her beauty and how her outfit hugged her figure had all the boys, Sasuke including, practically drooling at her, while most of the girls, the fangirls included, seething as to why their Sasuke wasn't staring at them. Taking in the tone of her body and attire, it was clear to say that she had some skill of some sort. Next, a tall blonde-headed boy stepped into the room. As he entered, there was such a pressure that no one, not even the teachers, could breathe. His aura gave off a sense of power, though hidden behind a sheet of calmness. And there was something deep down within that calm aura that sent foreboding chills down everyone's spine. It was the same as the night of the Kyubi no Yoko attack on the village. The feeling shortly before the Yondaime sealed the beast. A presence no one could make out, but everyone saw that even the QB stopped in fear because of it. But just like before, it not even lasted a second, and it was over. Further studying the boy, some of the girls including Ino and Hinata blushed at the display of muscles showed by his arms alone, and the thought of what might be under that skin-tight black sleeveless shirt even brought forth a few nosebleeds. He was at least 6 foot in height, and to many of them he gave off the look of the bad boy and looked made many of them swoon, even though the bottom half of his face was covered behind the bulk of the scarf of his cloak. Hinata couldn't put her finger on it, but she felt like she knew him from somewhere, as the blonde hair and half-lidded dark blue eyes reminded her of her crush. But something about him told her that this was a different person, or maybe. Her eyes widened as she made eye contact with the boy, and for a split second she could have sworn she saw his eyes slowly widen a few centimeters, and showed her a few things that made her heart skip before they returned to their original emotionless gaze. Recognition? Surprise? Longing? Here we have a I've actually never learned your names yet. Since you are new to the village, would you care to introduce yourself? Iruka asked them while smiling sheepishly. Your statement is somewhat correct, Iruka-sensei. My sister has never been to this village, but I was born here and haven't been here in about a decade. Naruto stated in a calm manner. Iruka raised an eyebrow as the voice sounded familiar to him. Mizuki was curious as well of the identity of the boy, as he did remind him of the demon boy. But the demon was dead in the deep pits of hell where he belonged. This is my sister Yujito Uzumaki, and I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to see you all again. He continued in the same calm manner. Not a second later he was tackled through the door by a blur of indigo hair and a light purple sweater jacket, and knocked down on the hallway ground. He was way beyond shocked as he felt a soft pair of lips pressed against his as the once shy Hinata Hyuga, who had fainted all the time around him, made the first move on sight. He was too shocked to fully register what the hell was happening at the moment. He glanced over to his side and noticed a black cat staring with an amused grin, and a fox the same size staring with an unreadable expression. Ah, how sweet, looks like I'll be getting another bed buddy. Yorichi laughed. Okay, that was something I did not need to hear, Yorichi. The fox responded curtly in a feminine tone, and then her eyes narrowed at the audacity when Hinata started to unzip her jacket. Ahem. And just like a light switch, Hinata was brought back to reality, as she finally realized what she was doing, who she was doing it with, and where she was doing it at the particular time. It was too much for her, and she did the one thing she hadn't done in years: she fainted. Naruto chuckled as he got off the floor, picking Hinata up bridal style, and walked back in the room with the fox and Yorichi in tow. Entering the class again, he looked at some of the students. He couldn't help but take amusement at their expressions. Shikamaru tried not to act too surprised, feeling that doing do would be too troublesome for him. Shino had both eyebrows raised upon realizing that the stranger before him was none other than his friend Naruto. He figured that there had to be some form of logic explanation for the transformation Naruto underwent, although he presently couldn't think of one. Although it has been 10 years, Kiba and Shuji, who stopped eating his chips and nearly dropped his bag of chips in fact upon seeing Naruto, both looked at Naruto with stupefied expressions. Shuji remembered that Naruto was unique in his own way, but he never suspected that something that what he was looking at could ever happen to the blonde. Kiba was praying that he could still win Hinata over if she didn't tell Naruto about his advances, and said boy didn't kill him. Sakura was in denial. Pure and utter denial. She couldn't believe how handsome and built Naruto became, while trying desperately to convince herself that Naruto's new appearance still doesn't measure up to Sasuke's. In spite of this, though, she wondered exactly what happened to Naruto in all these years that triggered this seemingly unexplainable transformation. In the recesses of her mind, though, something inside of her smirked. Hot damn! I never thought dead last Naruto would look this hot. Now I definitely regret not staking a claim on that, was all Ino could think, as she had an atomic blush on her face that rivaled Hinata's. An extremely pale boy that slightly caught his attention had a neutral facial expression, though he had a curious look in his eyes. Something about the boy voiced one thing in his mind. Root. Sasuke was scowling and seething at the sight. He wondered exactly what triggered Naruto's surprising change, and he was no fool to tell that he had much power. Power that should be his and not this peasant. He was also angered hotly at the fact that Naruto was getting stronger faster than he was and possessed power that he wanted for himself to use against Itachi, and prove his superiority to everyone. He will demand that he tells him how he got his power and give it to him. After all, he is a Uchiha elite. Iruka smiled brightly as he watched his former student place Hinata back in her seat, while sitting next to her, and Yujito sitting next to him. He also noticed the animals and saw how the fox hopped on top of Naruto's head much like Akamaru sat on Kiba's, and the cat curled up on Yujito's desk, purring as she started to stroke her fur. Well, first of all, I would like to welcome you back to the world of the shinobi, Naruto. For a minute I thought you gave up wanting to be Hokage on me. He chuckled. Naruto gave a small grin. Not at all, Iruka-sensei. Actually, I was approved by the Hokage to take a training trip. Breaking out of his brooding, Sasuke countered. Come on, Dobe, we all know that is a lie. Why would the Hokage waste time sending you, the dead last, a loser, and an idiot on a training mission when I, an Uchiha, an elite who was born for greatness, would get such opportunities before you? Yeah, why would he send you instead on Sasuke-kun? Sakura yelled with some of the fangirl agreeing with her. Much to Naruto's inner horror and Yujito's amusement, many of the Uchiha fangirl were staring at him with hearts in their eyes, now wearing t-shirts with his face on the front. How and why he didn't know and really didn't want to find out. Sakura would have continued her rant if she didn't nearly wet herself when she felt a large amount of killing intent aimed at her and everyone else in the class. But it wasn't coming from the blondes at all. It was from the fox perched on Naruto's head. Sasuke outwardly had a stoic look, but inside he was sweating bullets, trying his hardest to stay from showing outer fear from the intent. That notion went out the window when the potent blast intensified as the fox let out a low, deep growl that sent shivers down his and everyone else's spine. Her lips curled up slightly, showing her surprisingly sharp canines as Naruto started to speak. "Ka-chan, can you please calm down? Don't let her words affect you. Remember who she is." He spoke telepathically to the small fox, who seemed to have ignored him at first. "I have yet to release the seal yet, so." He glanced out the corner of his eye and noticed that Hinata was starting to stir, and just like a light switch, the killing intent switched off as the fox jumped off of his shoulder onto the desk of the Hyuga girl. She then started to nudge the side of her face, causing her to slightly giggle due to the ticklish feeling and starting to slowly open her eyelids. "I must have had a dream about Naruto-kun again, but this dream was way too real. Naruto-kun came back and looked hot with those muscles. I was going to ride him until I passed out in the hallway. I miss him so much," she thought with a slight blush, not fully aware that it wasn't a dream. "Good to see you awake now." Her eyes shot open as she heard the familiar yet more mature voice. She turned her head and was face to face with Naruto-kun? She asked in a whisper. "Yes, it's me, but we can catch up after class, as I believe we've held up enough of Iruka-sensei's time. So can you hold on until then?" She couldn't find her voice, so she just nodded dumbly. Iruka, out of his stupor after regaining his composure, nodded and started with the lesson, thus starting the blonde Jinchuriki's first day at the academy in over 10 years. The first half of the day was uneventful until it was time to go outside for target practice. As they were exiting the class, Kiba decided to make his presence known by putting an arm around Yujito's shoulder. "Hey babe, my name's Kiba and I just wanted to say that we should go hang out after school is done. I'll show you how to have a good time in the leaf," he said with cocky smile. Inwardly, Yujito cringed and was fuming about this filthy mutt touching her with his dirty hands. She felt like neutering him right here and now, but cancelled that notion as she inwardly grinned as Yorichi just gave her an idea. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a rosary necklace and handed them to Kiba. "Why don't you try this on? It would look good on you," she purred in his ear that sent excited shivers down his spine. Without a second thought, he obeyed her command instantly like an obedient puppy. She removed his arm from her shoulder and continued ahead of him till she caught up with Naruto. "Looks like you're putting the dog on a leash," Naruto stated calmly, not even bothering to look back. Yujito didn't respond as a small smirk was dawning her facial features. Location: Academy Training Ground. Time: 11:46 p.m. Iruka noticed that all original classmates were looking at Naruto and Yujito, either to satisfy their interest, to glare, or to steal glances at these new students and to look what kind of competition they would be. Sasuke, however, paid them no mind as he felt they were inferior to him, but stole glances time and again of Yujito. Other than Hinata, she was the only other girl that wasn't fawning over him. Of course, he hated fangirls with a passion, but he was used to every girl falling at his feet because he was the last Uchiha. Makes no difference. I'm a Uchiha after all, so she'll soon come around and fawn over my greatness. You too, Hinata." Sakura noticed his glances towards the female Jinchuriki and was seething with jealousy. She may not have been that good in taijutsu, but she would make sure to beat her into a pulp so her Sasuke-kun can look at her. "Yeah, that's right. We'll kick her ass so Sasuke-kun will have to go out with us." "Cha!" Inner Sakura screamed. Her inner ranting was interrupted by Iruka's instructing. "You could try, but it won't matter. Not for long." Sakura heard a whisper in her mind but just ignored it altogether, allowing the voice to smirk. "We're first going to start with kunai and shuriken practice. During your turn you will be given a total of 10 shuriken and 10 kunai to use for your target. Your accuracy on the target will be scored accordingly. If you hit a vital marker on the dummy, you will be given 5 points for that single marker. If you don't, you will be just given a point. To pass this exercise you need at least 20 points. However, the 2 people with the highest scores get to choose their opponents during the taijutsu part of the day." "Can we fight whoever we want?" Iruka-sensei asked Naruto. "Yes, you can," answered said sensei. Then he felt a chill down his spine when he saw the small sinister grin forming on the blonde's face. "The idea of this exercise is all about accuracy, as it is an important aspect in battle," Mizuki interjected. "If you to be in a tight bind against the enemy, and you only have kunai throwing weapons at your disposal, you need to take the enemy out as effectively as possible if he is within that your range of trajectory. So now let's start the exercise, as we will be calling you in alphabetical order. Now first is underscore." Naruto leaned against a tree patiently waiting for his name to be called. It was a long list of students, and just as long a list of different results. There were some that had no potential at this, and some who could show of some skills. Truth be told, he really didn't care for the exercise but decided to use it to an advantage for a little payback against a certain someone who he seen the night of the incident 10 years ago. He felt a presence coming from his side and turned his head to see Hinata slowly walking towards him shyly with a light blush on her face. While in the classroom he didn't really get a good look at her as they were seated, but now he was really noticing how different she looked from the last time he saw her. She was rid of the beige Eskimo jacket, and now was sporting a lavender sweater jacket with light gray sleeves with matching lavender ninja pants. Her once short hair now trailed a little over her and added more radiance to her. She really has grown up. A small smile crept up on his face which had an immediate effect on the indigo-haired student as her own blush started to increase. Was she blushing because of him? Did he find her attractive enough to blush? Before he used to think that whenever she would blush around him he would think that it was a sign of her being sick or she was allergic to him for some odd reason. To him she was weird, but now he knew the truth and it warmed his heart a lot as he concluded to the revelation. She truly cared for him. Maybe even love. She looks like she want to talk, the fox voice telepathic to the blonde. Naruto nodded and got off the tree to walk to her, as she was to him. He then stopped a foot in front of her, and watched her as her index fingers started to poke each other, and her gaze towards the ground as if it was the most interesting thing in the world. She lifted her head to speak but was interrupted once her name was called by Irika for her turn. He saw the sad look in her eyes and immediately figured out the cause of it. She turned around to walk away only to feel an arm rest on her shoulder, gaining a small eep from the lavender-eyed girl. I want you to do your best, Hinata, a masculine voice huskily whispered in her ear. It took all of her willpower not to faint or shudder at how hot he was sounding when he said that. By the graces of Kami she was able to hang on to the world of consciousness. All of her uneasiness and dread of the exercise disappeared that instant, and it was filled with determination and resolve. Pat yourself on the back, Sochi, you gave her some serious confidence. The red fox said as it appeared out of nowhere on Naruto's head. I'm going to do more for her now that I'm back. I know she's strong but lacks some confidence which I will help her with. At least until we leave back for home. The male blonde Jinchuriki replied. He took his hand off of her and went to stand by Yujito, who looked half asleep as she was leaning against the training post. Man, whoever said school was fun must have been smoking opium, she said in an annoyed tone. Patience, Nei-chan. We have to ride this out until we complete our objectives, Naruto responded. Beside, we are about to have some fun. He finished telepathically as a smirk graced his lips. So how will you do it? She asked curiously. I think I'll just let the raging demon have some fun. He heard said demon chuckle menacingly in his mindscape. Nevertheless, let's watch how well Hinata progressed over the years. He said, talking outwardly again. You sure do care about her a lot, Naruto, she said neutrally. It was always known to her, even though he had been through a lot and closed off his heart to nearly everyone, he still had a soft spot for some others besides her. I care for her well-being. Nothing more and nothing less. He responded and turned his head back to Hinata, sizing up to training dummy. Yujito rolled her eyes at his response. She knew that wasn't true. Time to show him how strong I became, she thought to herself as she closed her eyes to focus on the task at hand. Seconds later her eyes snapped open and with a burst of SBPD never before witnessed by her classmates she sent a barrage of kunai and shuriken at the training dummy, striking the heart area 7 times and hitting the kidneys, jugular vein, and larynx each 3 times apiece. The last 4 kunai hit non-vital spots on the dummy, which disappointed her a little but brightened up after she did the math in her head. She turned towards her class and was greeted with an impressed look from Naruto, a thumbs up and smile from Yujito, an extremely impressed Irika, and a bug-eyed Mizuki, Sasuke, and the rest of his classmates. That was amazing, Hinata. Irika the first to speak after a couple moments of silence. He was astonished at how well she did in the exercise, as she never showed that type of skill before in the previous exercises. He checked the accuracy of the projectiles and was proud of what the young Hyuga had done. It was moments like these that made him proud to be a teacher. So far we have Hinata Hyuga in the lead with 90 points, as she has the highest score so far. He finished with pride in her voice. That's because I haven't won yet, said a certain Uchiha. You won't even pass 80, Naruto responded in a calm manner. And this is coming from the dead last with no skill? You'll be lucky to get 20. Sasuke replied with his words dripping with arrogance. Uchiha's right. Kiba added, you should have just dropped out 10 years ago, as you aren't even worthy of being a shinobi. And this is coming from a boy whose dog smells better than him. Naruto retorted. What was that? Kiba growled and took a step closer. Naruto's chakra pattern changed in an instant, and his cold mask slipped into place, making him and Sasuke take an involuntary step back. The pressure made it hard for them to breathe, and for a moment they both were afraid of him. What seems to be the problem? An older voice said from the other side of the field that caught all the other classmates' attention. Nothing at all, Irika-sensei. Kiba and Sasuke were just telling a bad joke. It's nothing to concern yourself with, Yujito said as she started to walk away from the two with Naruto following behind her. 20 minutes later, Sasuke, Uchiha, your score is 77, Irika said while looking over the vitals. Said boy scowled at the score and went over by a tree to brood even more than usual. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto, just picked up 1 shuriken and go into the designated position. I think you'll need more than 1 shuriken, Dobe, Sasuke taunted. Naruto turned, looked Sasuke in the eye and threw the shuriken, and made a short sequence of one-handed hand signs. Shadow Shuriken no Jutsu, he whispered, not breaking eye contact, and the shuriken multiplied tenfold and riddled the entire training dummy with projectiles, not leaving a single marker uncovered. Show off, joked Yujito as the others stood there dumbfounded. Yujito took all her throwing object and just closed her eyes. With speed no one could follow, she threw the all but one at once, hiding all the fatal spots on the dummy. Oh, and Inuzuka, if you ever touch me again, she trailed off as she threw the last kunai at the training dummy, landing hilt deep into the groin, which made the Inuzuka pale whiter than a ghost. Well, I think we have our winners. Now who would you like to fight, Naruto? Asked a very impressed Irika. Kiba, he said with no hesitation. TCH, I was waiting for you to grow a sack so I can humiliate you in front of Hinata-chan. She doesn't need trash in her life, Kiba said with a feral grin, showing off his canines, hoping to intimidate the blonde. This was his chance to show Hinata he was top dog, and he wasn't going to pass it up. Yet you keep trying to pursue her. If you ask me, that's contradicting yourself, Naruto replied. What do you mean? Kiba asked, confused. Well, you said she shouldn't be around trash, yet you smell like garbage truck juice. And with that, most of the classmates were snickering, with the exception of Choji cracking up, holding his sides while almost choking on a chip. Furious about that comment, Kiba snarled and attacked with a fist to the face. Naruto simply sidestepped it, and the Inuzuka suddenly had a knee in the gut. Naruto then followed up with a knee to the face, so the bent-over Kiba stood straight once again, and then jumped with a roundhouse kick, hitting him in the face and sending Kiba crashing in the nearest tree while Naruto walked away from the scene. Everyone was shocked by that display of power. For most of the bystanders, it was only proof that Naruto was not the so-called dead last anymore. Naruto took a seat on the ground next to Hinata, who was blushing deeply at how close he was to her, and admiring how strong he had become over the years. But then she also heard the sounds of other girls talking about the boy, and some were discussing ways to get him alone with them. She couldn't help but get angry at the girls for just now seeing Naruto for the handsome boy he is. She saw him first and waited a decade to have him, so if anyone would get the boy alone with them, damn it was going to be her, and her alone. Subconsciously, she slowly started to emit a small amount of killing intent once she saw a couple girls trying to get close to him, which made them all back away in fear. Unknown to her, her crush was watching the whole thing out the corner of his eye and mentally heard Kyubi laughing hysterically. What's so funny? Yeah, I think it's actually rather cute. That's how I used to be around your father when he started having serious fangirl problems, the fox commented. Nothing is more funnier than a vixen running away banshees from her mate. Kyubi cackled. Mate? Kid, I know every little thought that pops up in your mind, even the perverted ones. He smiled lecherously that could make even the strongest pervert jealous. Halfway across Lightning Country, a white-haired man sneezed, alerting the nude women he was peeking on near the river. Oh shit, the man cried, as the women pounced on him, having dragged out of nowhere slim metal pipes and mallets, and the other three women not pounding the living daylights out of the pervert burned his research material. Now Yujito, who would you like to fight? She will fight against me, notified Sasuke, looking at Yujito. I will be your opponent. Iruka raised an eyebrow and looked at Yujito, asking her if this was alright. She shrugged and walked on the field, standing a few yards from the confident Sasuke. Go Sasuke-kun. You can beat her. Show that blonde-haired skank who's boss, cried the ever-present Sakura. No, he want the voice in her head spoke again. Shut up, who asked you? She screamed out loud, getting freaked out looks from everyone, except for Naruto, who was staring intently. HN. This won't even take long. If you're lucky, I might let you help me revive my clan, the Uchiha said to his opponent as he got into the Uchiha Interceptor style. Yujito's eyes slightly narrowed at the comment, but kept her emotionless features upon Sasuke and shifted her body into a stance that he nor the other spectators, except for Naruto, have ever seen before. Her knees were slightly bent, with her tight leg moved forward about a foot from its original position. Her posture was slightly hunched over while her elbows bent, and her hands stayed in front in a continuous grasping motion. Ready, Iruka said. Begin. Sasuke gauged the stance and figured it was a made-up stance, so he just charged her, figuring that he could finish her off in one blow. Hindsight will teach him later that that was a horrible idea. Before he could even retract his arm to swing, she thrusted her wrist into the Uchiha's throat, momentarily cutting off his ear supply, making him grab his throat in pain. Not skipping a beat, she swept his feet and shifted her weight on top on his back while grabbing one of his arm and twisting it behind his back with his face now in the dirt. She got the desired results of hearing him scream out in pain from the arm lock. You lose, Sasuke-kun. The more you try to struggle, the more pressure I'll put on your arm unless I do this, she purred in his ear while twisting his arm a little more and getting the desired results of him screaming louder in pain. Hey, let go of Sasuke-kun now. Sakura, while all the fangirls were yelling things similar, well, all except for Ino, who was completely in awe at how simple, yet accurate and fluid Yujito's movements were in terms of subduing her opponent. Sure, she was holding down her crush, but curiosity of her fellow blondes outweighed some of her infatuation. She glanced over at the other classmates to see a surprised Hinata, a slightly smirking Naruto, while a black cat was curled up around his neck and small dark red fox sat on top of his head, and it may have been a trick of the heat, but she could have swore she saw them smirking, as if they were enjoying what they were watching. All the boys and teachers were bug-eyed and slack-jawed at the spectacle of the infamous Rookie of the Year was getting his arse handed to him, by a girl no less. Irika decided it was time to call the match before she actually breaks his arm, which he personally thought the boy needed it done as in hopes of humbling him from the arrogance he feeds off of from some of the villagers. That is if getting your ass whipped by a girl wasn't enough. I think that's enough for one day, Nachan. He heard Naruto say in a bored tone. I'm surprised you had problems with this weakling. I barely broke in a sweat. Yujito replied back before she jabbed her index and middle finger in a spot on his neck right above his collarbone, which got the immediate reaction of him going limp. All of the banshees gasped in shock and horror and ran to their crush while the other classmates were still in their stupor how he was disassembled without that much force. And before anything else was said, the dismissal bell rung, indicating that the day was over. Well, I believe today's day is over, so well, pick up the rest of reviewing for the exam today. Irika dismissed, still a little stunned about all he has seen today. He looked at the retreating back of Naruto and couldn't help but smile at the once before knucklehead who he looked at like a little brother at times was back in his life. He felt destroyed when he thought said boy died all those years ago, but had to move on with his life. Now all of that has changed, and so has the young Uzumaki. I can't wait to see how you grow, Naruto, Irika thought with pride as he felt he was looking at the birth of a legend. Location: Hokage Tower. Time: 6:45 p.m. In the Hokage Tower, Sarutobi presided over a gathering of jounin who had qualified to become jounin instructors. Irika, the head instructor for the graduating class, was also present. All seemed to progress smoothly until the discussion turned to the two blonde, unknown Jinchuriki whose names were raised. Following their recent scuffles with Kiba and Sasuke, many seemed hesitant to include them on their teams, dismissing their victories as mere flukes. One dissenting voice, however, belonged to Kakashi Hatake. I believe I should mentor Naruto Uzumaki, Kakashi proposed. Why is that necessary? You already have Sasuke Uchiha, the Rookie of the Year, and Sakura Harino, who topped the class. Adding Naruto to your team would create an imbalance, countered another jounin, smugly referring to Naruto as the dead last, a title he had held for years. In an instant, the atmosphere turned tense as two intense killing intents permeated the room. One emanated from a purple-haired ANBU, incensed at the derogatory remarks about her brother. The other, more ominous, originated from Kakashi himself, his visible Sharingan betraying his anger. Before anyone could react, Kakashi vanished, leaving only the sound of chirping birds in his wake. Moments later, a lightning-infused strike incapacitated the offending jounin, leaving him writhing in agony. Now that I've dealt with the trash, can we continue? Kakashi's demeanor had shifted drastically, his former laziness replaced by an aura of seriousness. Sarutobi chuckled, observing as the injured jounin was escorted away. However, we shall proceed, but I regret to inform you, Kakashi, that your request cannot be granted as the council will not approve it, Sarutobi interjected, sensing Kakashi's disappointment and anger. While he had vowed to protect Naruto, the council's interference had prevented him from doing so. Nevertheless, Sarutobi had a plan. However, he continued, catching the attention of everyone present. Based on my assessment, both Uzumakis possess mid to high jounin level skills, he declared, eliciting laughter from some, until a voice silenced them. Hokage-sama speaks the truth. Naruto has made significant strides in the past decade, the voice asserted. All eyes turned to an unfamiliar figure clad in a standard Konoha jounin uniform, adorned with a Fox ANBU mask. Tenzo? Kakashi's surprise was evident, as he anticipated the unfolding revelation. The masked figure approached, revealing himself to be Tenzo, who expressed his readiness to partner with Kakashi once more. I introduced the Uzumaki's new jounin sensei, along with another yet to be decided, Sarutobi announced, declaring them the first genin squad from the Leaf. Keeping the siblings together seems wise, Kurinai remarked. Indeed. Their bond and Naruto's trust issues necessitate it, Sarutobi agreed. Addressing Tenzo's request, he granted anonymity, christening him Yamato Zaimoku. With the meeting adjourned, Kakashi lingered. I'll ensure Naruto joins you on your first C-rank mission when you're ready. After all, you're his god brother, Sarutobi informed him. Kakashi's crinkled eye narrowed slightly, his internal conflict evident. Respectfully, Hokage-sama, I believe I am the most suitable candidate to carry on my sensei's legacy, Kakashi interjected, his tone firm yet laced with a subtle hint of frustration. The room fell into a puzzled silence, everyone exchanging glances, except for Sarutobi, who remained stoic. I understand your sentiment, Kakashi. However, my decision stands, Sarutobi replied, his tone unwavering. Kakashi's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but he held his emotions in check, offering a resigned nod. As Kakashi vanished in a puff of smoke, Sarutobi couldn't help but feel a pang of remorse for denying his request. Yet, he remained resolute in his decision, knowing it was for the greater good. Amidst his musings, Yugao's sudden appearance drew his attention. Pardon my interruption, Hokage-sama, but we've discovered the body of Chunin Academy instructor Mizuki. Further examination revealed a genetic-altering curse mark on his forearm. Warning, it's about to get a little dark. A sudden shift in movement suggested that Mizuki was awake, shuddering in not what could be presumed as fear, but I see one hand onto the floor, the silver-haired Chunin pushed his weight against it as to prop himself up. His surroundings were not to his recollection anything he had ever seen. His vision was still somewhat blurred, but the academy instructor knew that his own apartment would have been recognizable through even the tiniest of holes in the wall. For Mizuki's taste, though considered distasteful by some, had not tinted his vision. The walls of his apartment had been painted a sickly bright green. The walls in which he was enclosed around were most definitely not green, but more of the chilling stone variety. How did I get here? I was just on my way to find some villagers to finish the Kyubi brat off tonight. And now, rubbing his eyes eventually cleared the mist, and Mizuki saw with his untainted eyes the first of many disturbances to come. He had been trapped within the 6 walls surrounding, enclosed, and fortunately, there was a light source, hanging above his head, being somewhat out of place, hang a bulb illuminating the tomb. Pushing once more placed the Chunin on his feet, staring aimlessly into the bulb, wonderful not how he had got there, but how he could in fact escape. Slamming his fists against the walls obviously did nothing, screaming every drop of energy he had left out of his lungs had the same effect. After an hour or two of depleting his energy by frantic movements and hysterical shouting, Mizuki finally admitted defeat, and slowly fell crying against one of the walls, slowly curling into a ball. Presumably the bulb had been deliberately made faulty, for it began to flicker like madness, driving Mizuki further into a state of lunacy. Flick! Flick! With every flick of the bulb, he grew more and more agitated, until all at once, his anger exploded. Grabbing the scorching hot bulb in his hand, the academy instructor flung it against the wall, shattering the glass in 1,000 different directions, and one piece had flown directly into his eye. Mizuki hadn't time to regret destroying his only light source or time to weep for his eye. Leaving shards of glass on the floor and him being without footwear made it all the worse for him. For as soon as he had done this, a continuing shudder had replaced the flickering of the bulb, and suddenly, through a small hole in the wall he hadn't earlier noticed, came a projected light. Through the hole and onto the wall came this light, projecting a sequence of numbers counting in no particular order. 3, 1, 2, 0. One assumes that this was merely a series of countdown numbers to the presentation, but it bears little relevance to the story. As the last of the numbers had faded, suddenly from the darkness appeared a blurred black and red figure. Whilst the camera adjusted itself, it was clear that the figure Mizuki was glaring at was in fact some sort of archaic fox dummy, the sort of ventriloquist would use to entertain his audience. There were 2 pair fire black whisker-like markings on the cheeks on its face, and its eyes were not dissimilar from large blood-red marbles with black slits for pupils. It was clothed in a fine tuxedo with a bright red bow tie. One wouldn't have imagined suits to be made to fit such a small stature of a man, or in this case dummy. With fear in his heart, Mizuki gathered his remaining strength, and peered fearfully into the projection from a distance. Suddenly the dummy turned and looked Mizuki in the eye. The Chunin could have moved without the dummy following. This was clearly a recording, and for the first time in quite a while, he heard a voice other than his own. Mizuki, Mizuki my, haven't we been a naughty boy? Mizuki stared in utter confusion as the voice continued. I've been watching you for some time now, Mizuki, and you haven't been living up to your promises as a dedicated leaf ninja? Having so-called conspired against the demon, and carved the heaven kanji in his back, hurting many people in the process. You thought of it as a sick joke to belittle him, saying to all your accomplices that it would make him suffer more in hell with that marking many demons despise. As I recalled, you took absolute glee carving into the back of a 7-year-old boy. Mizuki backed off with surprise. How did it know that about him? Sure, he had been in the group that killed the demon, but how was it to know of that? It continued to speak. Now Mizuki, I am not a person who would just pass judgment and sentence without giving you a chance to appeal for innocence first. Mizuki's attention had peaked. As you should now be aware, there are no doors or windows in this room. The only way out you will find will be directly under this projection. This patch of wall is not made of hard stone, but in fact a soft clay substitute. All you have to do is claw your way through to the other side where daylight and freedom await you. The dummy stopped talking, and faced the other direction, but the quickly jolted back to the camera to conclude the message with, oh, and one thing Mizuki, that bulb you smashed, the glass has been laced with a deadly miasma which quickly feeds on a substance which is now coursing through your veins and flesh, so if I were you, I'd tread carefully in the darkness. You wouldn't want to become infected now, would you? The message had ended, and the light from the projector had faded. Mizuki recalled the shard of glass that had flung into his eye. The Chunin placed his hand on his face, and felt his flesh fall from his cheeks to the ground. Damn you, demon! 10 minutes before Hokage meeting, not a single dent had been made in the wall when the ANBU arrived at the scene. All that could be found was a reddish-brown toffee-like substance coated on a thin frame of a skeletal structure covered in clothing with a Konoha forehead protector, and an academy name badge reading, Mizuki. Surprisingly, the only part of his body that wasn't affected was his right forearm, which contained a marking of some sort. Also surprising that no one noticed the figure observing in the shadows before flickering out of existence. Warning over. Location, Hokage Monument. Time, 7:30. Perched atop Hokage Mountain, Naruto and Yujito found themselves seated on the head of the Yondaime Hokage Naruto comfortably, while Yujito reclined with crossed legs, her gaze fixed on the setting sun. Kushina and Yoruichi had departed with Kyubi for reasons known only to them. So what's your take on things now? Yujito inquired, her tone tinged with boredom. It was to be expected. When I vanished, they presumed me dead, and my return from the beyond won't likely alter their perception of me. If anything, it'll reinforce their belief that I'm a demon, Naruto replied with a resigned sigh. It doesn't matter though. You have family now, and I'd sooner perish than let those arrogant fools lay a finger on you again, Yujito declared firmly. The feeling's mutual, Nachan. Naruto halted as he sensed a familiar chakra signature, a genuine smile lighting up his face. Glancing at his sister, who grinned mischievously, he rose from his seat. Well, it's time for this kitten to stretch her legs. I'll catch you at the apartment. And do try to keep the noise down this time, she added with a teasing grin before leaping off the mountain and darting across rooftops. Naruto chuckled softly. She's been spending too much time with Yoruichi. Well, it's to be expected. With the familiar chakra signature, Hinata looked around using her Byakugan and spotted him seated on the stone head of the Yondaime Hokage. It was a spot she had frequented over the past 10 years to reflect on her feelings for him. Approaching slowly, her heart nearly frozen with emotion, she gazed at Naruto in the same place he had occupied all those years ago, cherishing every moment of their proximity. Tears welled in her eyes as she drew nearer. Oh, Naruto-kun, after all this time I can finally be close to you again, she thought to herself, overwhelmed with emotion. Initially, the shock of seeing him again stirred up old feelings and insecurities, rendering her speechless and shy in his presence. But now, she no longer cared about others' perceptions. Her reverie was abruptly interrupted when Naruto vanished from his spot, sending her into a panic as she frantically searched for him, fearing her heart was deceiving her once more. Just as she was about to spiral into despair, a strong voice broke through her turmoil from behind. Words cannot describe how truly radiant you look, Hinata Hyuga, the voice proclaimed. Whipping around, she met Naruto's gaze with widened eyes, sensing an unmistakable emotion even without activating her Byakugan. Longing, they locked eyes in a timeless gaze, their unspoken emotions swirling between them until Naruto opened his arms. Overwhelmed, Hinata burst into tears, rushing into his embrace and burying her face against his chest. The moment their bodies connected, she felt a part of her heart that she thought had moved on returning, and she clung to him with renewed fervor. His chakra enveloped them, its power palpable, yet instead of fear, it filled her with warmth and joy. Their gazes locked, and they leaned in for a passionate kiss, igniting Naruto's chakra to surge, sending shockwaves through the ground and forming a small crater beneath them. A tempest of red chakra swirled around them as they delved into each other's mouths, a battle of passion and desire unfolding for the first time. Naruto's chakra intensified with each passing moment as their kiss deepened, both of them grasping onto each other desperately, Hinata tangling her fingers in his hair while Naruto pulled her closer by the small of her back, doubling the intensity of their embrace. As Naruto infused the kiss with Kyuubi's chakra, Hinata couldn't help but moan in pleasure, the sensation coursing through her body. Suddenly, the bubble of chakra exploded, washing over them like a wave of love and euphoria. Slowly, they pulled away from each other, their eyes locked in a mesmerizing exchange, Hinata lost in the deep blue of Naruto's eyes, while Naruto found himself captivated by the pools of lavender and beauty that defined Hinata's gaze. In that moment, all the trials and tribulations they had faced melted away, replaced by the undeniable certainty that their love was worth every hardship they had endured. You have no idea how much I've longed for you, my sunshine, he breathed, his voice heavy with emotion as he drew her close. I've missed you too, Naruto-kun, she confessed, her voice trembling with a mixture of joy and longing. Tears welled up in her eyes, cascading down her cheeks like a gentle waterfall. I love you so deeply I never stopped believing that one day you would return to me, she whispered, her heart laid bare in her words, her vulnerability adding to her beauty. Naruto, overcome by the flood of emotion swirling within him, felt his heart flutter in his chest. Her confession stirred something deep within him, igniting a flame of longing he had tried to suppress for so long. As he gazed into her tear-filled eyes, he realized that his feelings for her ran deeper than he had ever dared to admit. The way her presence filled his heart with warmth, the way her smile could brighten even the darkest of days, he knew now that it was more than just fondness. With a tender smile, Naruto gently wiped away her tears, his touch conveying all the affection he had kept hidden for so long. And as he held her in his arms, he whispered softly, I've missed you more than words can express. But just as Naruto prepared to confess his own love, a chilling image flashed in his mind, the face of someone from his past, a face twisted into a cold, dead smile. It was a visage he had tried to bury deep within his memories, but now it resurfaced with haunting clarity, bringing with it a surge of pain and doubt. The memory of that smile, devoid of warmth or kindness, filled Naruto with an overwhelming sense of dread. It whispered cruel words of doubt and fear, reminding him of his past failures and the people he had let down. For a moment, Naruto faltered, his heart gripped by the icy fingers of uncertainty. Could he truly open himself up to love again, knowing the specter of his past mistakes loomed over him? Would he only end up causing more pain and suffering? But then, as he looked into the eyes of the woman before him, he saw not judgment or condemnation, but love and understanding. In her gaze, he found solace and acceptance, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness of his doubts. Summoning his courage, Naruto pushed aside the echoes of his past and embraced the warmth of the present moment. With a gentle smile, He reached out and wiped away her tears, his touch a silent promise of his love and devotion. From her hidden vantage point nestled within the tree's branches, Kushina silently observed the unfolding scene below. With each passing moment, it became evident to her that the years had bestowed upon her the confidence necessary to finally confront him. Amidst her contemplation, she couldn't help but notice the striking resemblance between Hinata and her mother. It wasn't merely their physical likeness that caught her attention, it was something deeper, an echo of Hitomi's essence mirrored in her daughter. As she watched Hinata interact with her son, Kushina couldn't shake the feeling that the young girl had a promising future ahead of her, potentially intertwined with her son's. However, she also recognized the daunting challenges and competition that awaited Hinata on her journey. Yet, there was an unspoken assurance within Kushina's thoughts that if Hinata possessed even a fraction of Hitomi's strength and resilience, she would undoubtedly navigate the trials ahead with grace and determination. In the quiet solitude of her thoughts, Kushina found herself silently rooting for Hinata. She harbored a sense of hope that, much like Hitomi, Hinata would find her own path and emerge victorious despite the obstacles that lay ahead. As she continued to observe from her hidden perch, a sense of admiration and solidarity welled within her, fostering a silent bond between herself and the young girl who carried the legacy of her mother. Hina-chan, just give me some time, and I'll learn to. Naruto's voice trailed off abruptly, his expression hardening. Instinctively, he shoved her behind him, one hand forming a protective barrier while the other crackled with a burgeoning, ominous blue glow. Naruto Hinata's voice quivered with concern, her eyes widening as she took in the gravity of the situation. Suddenly, four ANBU operatives materialized from the forest shadows, their presence heightening the tension in the air. They approached cautiously, their weapons drawn, their movements calculated. Hinata's heart raced as she realized the fear etched on their faces, their fear of Naruto. They knew of his formidable power, of the devastation he could unleash. They were prepared to take him down, to eliminate the threat he posed. The realization fueled Hinata's own apprehension, a sense of dread settling over her like a suffocating cloak. She stepped forward, wrapping her arms tightly around him. The ANBU bristled, sensing a threat looming. Hinata Hyuga, release him and come here immediately. We've been tasked with ensuring your safety and escorting Naruto Uzumaki to the Hokage, demanded the ANBU with a frog emblem on his mask, likely the leader of the squad. Hinata shot a glare at the assembled ANBU. Their cautious choice of words hinted at their true intentions, which seemed more like a covert apprehension of Naruto. And what's the reason for this intrusion? If it's not a legitimate one, he's staying right here. It's been years since I've seen him, and I demand some time alone with him, she retorted, her tone laced with defiance. The ANBU leader's expression darkened at her resistance, and one of them boldly maneuvered to flank Naruto, the tension in the air palpable. Naruto's demeanor shifted, his protective instincts flaring, ready to react with lethal force at a moment's notice. Don't lay a hand on her or face the consequences, Naruto warned, his gaze turning icy, a silent threat hanging in the air. His eyes briefly flashed red, a dangerous signal of his resolve. The ANBU, recognizing the imminent danger, quickly retreated, unwilling to provoke further hostility. Naruto spared a quick glance over his shoulder, his confidence unshaken even in the presence of the old man. He doubted any immediate danger, suspecting instead that the surge of energy had been brought to the old man's attention. Alternatively, it could be the council's concern about the demon within him. Had they truly believed it had been unleashed, they would have sent more than just 4 ANBU. Hinata, it's alright. Trust me and go with them, Naruto assured her, his voice calm yet firm. I can handle this. The old man just wants to talk. But be careful not to ruffle any feathers with your family. They won't appreciate your association with me. Reluctance painted Hinata's expression as she hesitated to let go of Naruto's hand. Her concern for him was evident, warring with her need to comply. With a heavy heart, she finally relented, stepping back as Naruto moved towards the ANBU, their tension palpable. As Naruto approached the ANBU, Hinata's reluctance seemed to intensify. She watched him closely, her uncertainty mirroring his own. His reassuring words did little to ease her apprehension, and she grappled with the decision to leave his side. Sensing her lingering doubt, Naruto paused in his advance towards the ANBU. With a wry smile, he quipped, "Do I need to go in chains too?" The ANBU exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. Hinata's tense expression softened slightly at the jest, a brief moment of levity amidst the tension. With a final glance, Hinata reluctantly turned away, her footsteps heavy as she made her way home. Naruto watched her depart, his resolve unyielding. As he joined the ANBU, he prepared himself for whatever lay ahead, ready to face it head-on. He felt his tenant's presence, a subtle confirmation that the deed had indeed been done. The air hung heavy with the aftermath of their actions. "How was it?" he inquired, his voice calm yet edged with anticipation. "Let's just say that Ningen is going to need a new assistant," Kurama replied with a low chuckle, his tone carrying a hint of mischief. "Sochi, I'm not too far away." "Be careful," Kushina interjected, her voice laced with concern. "There are at least 40 more ANBU within a quarter-mile radius, and I've already let your sister know, so she's not too far away either. From what I can see, they're en route." The warning set Naruto on edge, the gravity of the situation becoming more apparent. It seemed Danzo's reach extended further than they had initially anticipated. TCH. Let him come, Naruto muttered defiantly, his resolve strengthening in the face of adversity. He was prepared for whatever consequences may arise from their actions. As Hinata walked away, a whirlwind of emotions churned within her. Stunned and heartbroken, she replayed the moment they had just shared in her mind. Their declarations of love had been tender and sincere, yet now they were torn apart, their connection abruptly severed. The prospect of returning to her family filled her with dread. She knew all too well the disapproval that awaited her, especially from her father who harbored knowledge of his secret. Amidst the turmoil, memories flooded her thoughts, like shards of fragmented glass piecing together a bittersweet mosaic. She couldn't help but recall the day before he had left all those years ago. The pain of his departure had carved a permanent scar upon her heart, and now, history seemed poised to repeat itself. The ache of longing for him resurfaced, mingling with the raw anguish of their current predicament. Her steps felt heavy as she navigated the path ahead. The realization that she might be forbidden from seeing him again weighed heavily on her soul. The thought of her father's anger intensified her anxiety, for she knew his disapproval could be both formidable and unyielding. What twist of fate lay ahead for them now, she could only wonder. With each passing moment, the distance between them grew, both physically and emotionally. As they went their separate ways, her heart ached with uncertainty. Would their paths ever converge again, allowing them the chance to reconcile their love amidst the obstacles that now stood between them? Hinata couldn't help but fear the unknown future that lay ahead, fraught with the daunting prospect of being torn apart from the one she held most dear. Naruto strolled serenely alongside the ANBU, making his way back to town and eventually to the Hokage Tower, where he anticipated a meeting with the esteemed leader himself. He couldn't shake the suspicion that the old man was under pressure from the council, likely being coerced into orchestrating Naruto's execution. Barely 2 days had passed, yet they already sought his demise. Well, such was life. Glancing at the ANBU accompanying him, Naruto couldn't help but inwardly chuckle. Can you believe these guys? They're practically trembling with fear, hoping I won't end them. Can't say I blame them, he remarked to Kurama. They're just being smart. They're well aware of the power I wield, and it terrifies them. That's the kind of respect I've earned from your people, and from others even in my time. Being feared is quite intoxicating, sneered Kurama, a smirk playing on his lips as he relished in his own arrogance. Interrupting his conversation with his tenant, Naruto halted as they approached the front gates of the Hokage Tower. It was time to confront the proverbial firing squad, and he anticipated it would be quite the spectacle. As they entered the tower's lobby, Naruto reconsidered his initial assumption about the Hokage's confidence in his state of mind. Before him stood nearly 3 dozen ANBU, clad in battle attire, as though expecting a war. Naruto chuckled, earning puzzled stares from the ANBU. My, you're all quite tense, aren't you? Am I truly that intimidating? If I had malicious intent, I'd have acted already. What a farce, he remarked with an unsettling calmness that left them all uneasy. With that, he proceeded towards the stairs, noting the absence of Yugao and Tenzo among the ANBU. It was a relief. He wouldn't dare harm his sister and friend, even if it came to eliminating the rest. The ANBU divided into 4 groups, encircling their target as they escorted him toward the Hokage's office. Leading the way, one ANBU member broke off from the rest and entered the office alone. Moments later, the door closed behind them, leaving 3 guards outside in readiness. It wasn't ideal, but it could have been worse. They all could have entered at once. Naruto immediately noticed the presence of more than just the Hokage upon entering the room, along with the ANBU guards. The elder advisors were there, as well as Inoichi Yamanaka. His gaze narrowed slightly at the sight of the last person, who returned his glare. She was Hana Inuzuka, recognizable by her long brown hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, with the distinct fawn-like tattoos of the Inuzuka clan adorning her cheeks. Additionally, a flower tattoo adorned her upper right arm, possibly a play on her name. Dressed in shunin attire, her vest was slightly unzipped, revealing a hint of cleavage, paired with black shorts and standard shinobi sandals. Hana was the heiress to the Inuzuka clan. Naruto reminisced about their past interactions when he was 5 years old. She used to be kind, often giving him candy and joining in his play with other children. However, things took a dark turn when villagers and some of her clan members discovered their association. They poisoned her mind, convincing her that he was the reincarnation of the Kyuubi. The situation escalated to the point where she sicked her dogs on him, while her father watched and laughed. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the ANBU captain conversing with the Hokage. The boy was found on top of the Hokage monument, sir, the messenger reported, his tone carrying a barely concealed disdain. He was found in the presence of Hinata Hyuga, who seemed to be uninjured. When we attempted to extract the Hyuga heiress, the boy threatened one of my men. We were eventually able to secure the heiress, and she was returned to the Hyuga complex, albeit reluctantly. She did not seem to want to leave his side. The boy has a name, Taicho, and you would do well to remember your manners in my presence. You may leave, said Sarutobi. The ANBU captain looked visibly irritated, his distaste for Naruto evident in his demeanor. With all due respect, sir, that thing threatened one of my men. It's obvious that the demon is escaping its prison, which we should dispose of him now before he is able to break free. You did not see the size of the crater at the site where we found him. It was easily 100 feet in diameter. The demon is escaping. We must act now, said the captain in a demanding tone, making Naruto inwardly chuckle. You have no control over your own soldiers. Pitiful old man, let me help you. Call this a freebie manipulate, thought Naruto, noticing the messenger's thinly veiled disgust. Naruto's eyes glowed with a subtle green hue, a manifestation of the power he had honed through his travels. It was this subtle radiance that signaled the activation of his ability, manipulate. Unlike the traditional techniques of genjutsu which relied on the manipulation of chakra, this power operated through otherworldly means, bypassing the need for chakra control. As his eyes shimmered with this eerie light, Naruto knew that Sarutobi was fair game for his influence, his mind open to the subtle suggestions that manipulate could offer. The third's eyes blazed like flames for some inexplicable reason as he turned his gaze upon the ANBU commander. Who do you think you are speaking to, Commander, or should I say Lieutenant? I am the Hokage of this village, and I alone decide when and if we need to take action regarding Naruto. Now you are dismissed, and take your men with you. I do not wish to lay eyes on you, Sarutobi declared, feeling a fire within him that hadn't burned so fiercely in decades. One of the ANBU members dared to step forward. But sir, the council instructed us to guard the boy and you. We are not to leave his side, he explained, earning a hardened glare from the elderly Hokage. Sarutobi's gaze shifted to Danzo, who merely shrugged indifferently. We suggested this for our safety, to ensure that the Uzumaki child does not overstep his boundaries, Danzo added quickly, catching himself before mentioning the demon, not eager to relive the chaos of the last council meeting. Sarutobi's patience wore thin. He turned back to the ANBU, slamming his hand down on the desk to emphasize his point. And I have told you to wait outside. Do not forget who you answer to. Now leave, or I shall strip you all of your ranks and send you back to the academy and inform Nico that she has my blessing as the new commander, he commanded. The ANBU hesitated for a moment, then begrudgingly obeyed, exiting the room and closing the door behind them. Naruto smirked inwardly as he released his subtle influence, satisfied with the outcome. Sarutobi shifted his gaze towards Naruto, his expression softening compared to moments before, tinged with a hint of sadness. I presume you're aware of the reason for your presence here, Naruto. Is it true that you confronted one of his associates? Naruto advanced, meeting Sarutobi's gaze squarely as he replied, Yes, I understand why I'm here, and yes, it's true that I startled one of his associates. I merely glanced at him, and he nearly had a heart attack. I never laid a hand on them. When Hinata Hyuga expressed her concerns and they attempted to forcibly remove her as if I posed a threat to her safety, I made it clear I wouldn't tolerate any harm coming to her. His words were delivered with a composed demeanor. Sarutobi's eyes widened momentarily in surprise before regaining their composure. Naruto noticed the reaction, recognizing the astonishment at Hinata's response and his own level of understanding. However, before delving into that, he needed clarification. May I inquire as to why they're here, especially her? He asked, gesturing towards Hana, who emitted a low growl in his direction. Well, flashback/30 minutes earlier, the Hokage found himself enduring yet another stress-laden day, burdened by responsibilities he felt he shouldn't still be shouldering at his age. At 70, retirement should have been his refuge, yet duty kept pulling him back in. How can you possibly see Naruto as a threat just for defending himself? Sarutobi's voice carried an undertone of exasperation, weary of these recurring debates. The fact that the boy dared to stand up for himself, especially given his history of non-confrontation, should be seen as evidence enough. He should face constant retribution to remind the fox of its place within its new host, to make it aware that it's vulnerable to attack at any moment, Koharu interjected, her disdain for both the fox and its vessel palpable. Danzo and Hamura remained silent, observing the tense exchange with impassive expressions. Dialogue like that only serves to make us no better than those we claim to oppose, the enemies of our daimyo. Do you wish for us to become hypocrites? Sarutobi countered, attempting to inject some reason into the discussion, though weariness tinged his words. It's better than harboring a village that houses the nine-tailed demon fox. The very same demon that claimed your predecessor's life, Lord Hokage. Frankly, I'm surprised you haven't taken it upon yourself to rid us of the boy. But I suppose old age has softened you, turning you into a sympathizer for the demon merely because it resides in the body of a 18-year-old, Hamura retorted, aiming to sway favor away from the Hokage. Regardless, Naruto will remain a leaf shinobi, whether the council agrees or not. They cannot strip him of his ninja status without legitimate cause unrelated to the Kyuubi within him. He is not the demon itself, despite what you may believe, Hamura, Sarutobi asserted, though the weariness in his voice betrayed his frustration with the council's narrow-mindedness. I'm well aware of our thoughts on the matter, Hokage-sama. That's precisely why Inoichi Yamanaka will be probing his mind today, once the ANBU retrieve him. If Naruto proves to be an unstable vessel, we'll have the authority to not only bar him from becoming a genin but also to issue a public execution order, as sanctioned by the council, to protect the village from any potential harm, Danzo announced, garnering agreement from the other elders. And what if he passes this examination with flying colors, Danzo? What if he's as stable as I maintain? Sarutobi challenged, the weariness in his voice now tinged with a hint of defiance, fully aware that if this examination yielded no damning evidence, Danzo would have to answer for criticizing the Hokage of Konoha. I'll cross that bridge when, and if, I come to it, along with the other elders. But rest assured, Hokage-sama, it won't come to that, Danzo replied, a hidden satisfaction evident as he anticipated finally disposing of the Namikaze and securing his long-desired weapon. End of flashback. Let's just wrap this up. I've got better things to do than waste time with a bunch of closed-minded fools who can't see beyond their own biases, Naruto declared, eliciting a growl from Hana, a smirk from Inoichi, and icy glares from the elders. Why, you insolent, Koharu began, her hand edging towards a kunai, but a warning glance from Hiruzen halted her, unwilling to allow any harm to befall the boy at the hands of what Ares fittingly termed a tree-humping bitch. Enough. We'll conduct the examination in the room I've prepared down the hall. Only Hana Inuzuka and Naruto Uzumaki are to be present. I won't tolerate any interference that could compromise the integrity of this examination, Sarutobi asserted firmly, ensuring no meddling from the elders. Why must a veterinarian examine me instead of a qualified doctor? Naruto queried, puzzled by the arrangement. Hana Inuzuka is a skilled veterinarian with keen senses. She's handled various animal-related incidents and her expertise is more than adequate for this examination, Hamaru explained, sneering at Naruto, only to be silenced by the boy's intense glare, which instilled fear in the elder. Fine. But I won't be undressing completely for some dog enthusiast like her, Naruto asserted firmly, drawing the line at exposing himself fully to a woman. I couldn't care less about seeing what's under your clothes, kid. You're probably lacking in that department anyway, Hana retorted, smirking, but her confidence waned when Naruto exuded a menacing aura, causing her to tremble with fear, an intensity she had never encountered before. Keep talking like that, and you'll never bear children, Naruto threatened, his hand twitching towards his sword, but he restrained himself, mindful of Kurama's reminder to avoid unnecessary conflict during the examination. Both of you, cease this bickering. Naruto, I expect no bloodshed from you or your examiner. Any violence will be met with severe consequences, the Hokage intervened sternly, unwilling to tolerate conflict in his office late at night. Understood. Let's get this done. But mark my words, if she so much as gives me a sideways glance, I'll make sure her remains are delivered personally to her mother's doorstep, Naruto declared coldly, striding towards the designated room. Behind him, Hana Inuzuka followed reluctantly, her confidence waning in the face of Naruto's threats. The elders watched with growing concern, realizing they had never witnessed such coldness and brutality from Naruto before, and they began to question their ability to restrain him if he turned violent. Ultimately, they concluded that they were ill-equipped to handle him and silently prayed that he would remain calm, knowing that if he didn't, they would be in serious trouble. Sarutobi just wanted to go home. Naruto cautiously entered the room, his eyes scanning the surroundings with suspicion. He couldn't bring himself to trust either the elder adults or his supposed examiner to adhere strictly to protocol. The room itself was modest yet functional, furnished with a solitary chair, a table, and a wooden clipboard for recording pertinent information during the examination. After a brief survey of the space, he stepped forward, with Hana trailing behind him, her expression a mix of disdain and disbelief at the notion of someone like Naruto being deemed fit for the ninja life. Whispers among her clan had long painted Naruto as the vessel for the Kyuubi, a fact that her kin regarded as paramount to their own safety and interests, transcending even the decrees of the Hokage. It was a technicality that permitted such discussions within the confines of the clan home, a loophole they clung to amidst their collective unease. Seeking clarity, Hana had approached her mother, only to be met with disappointment and a stern admonishment against entertaining such notions about the boy. Her mother vowed to address those who had poisoned her mind. The hospital witnessed a surge of activity from concerned clansmen that day. Yet, amidst the commotion, no one had seen fit to inform Kiba of the situation regarding Naruto. His propensity for divulging information without consideration for the consequences made discretion paramount. With a determined resolve, Hana shut the door behind them, locking it securely to ensure no interruptions would disrupt the examination proceedings. We'll soon discover just how much of the demon fox resides within you, she thought to herself, her gaze fixed on Naruto as the examination commenced. Strip down to your boxers, she instructed, though Naruto was already complying before her words left her lips. I don't suppose that's an issue. Do you know a reputable tailor in the village who does quality custom work? Namikaze inquired, casually removing his shirt and arm bracers, placing them on the table without facing her. For a fleeting moment, Hana was speechless, taken aback by the scars littering his back. Faded slash marks, burned scars, and stab wounds decorated his skin, reminiscent of enduring time with the Biki Merino. But what truly struck her, filling her with both revulsion and sorrow, were the teeth marks just below his shoulder blade. The largest scar, a prominent burn mark with the damning kanji for murder atop a smaller one reading heaven, left her questioning why his wounds hadn't healed if he was the Kyuubi. Weren't all his injuries supposed to mend? I wouldn't know of any specific place, Hana responded, veering away from the topic of the Kyuubi, leaving it to interpretation, unsure if Naruto was aware of the fox's presence. If you're alluding to the Kyuubi, I'm already aware, as are you, so there's no need to conceal it, Naruto interjected, discarding the remnants of his dark blue uniform to join the other items, revealing his well-built physique to Hana. Grateful to be standing behind Naruto, Hana's cheeks burned with a blush at the sight before her. Perhaps he's more developed than I presumed, she mused, stealing a glance at his backside before snapping out of her reverie, though reluctantly. I'm not here to waste time, Naruto declared calmly, sensing her gaze lingering on him, much to her delight and his irritation. Hana returned to reality as she approached Naruto, who stood waiting. She reached for the clipboard on the table and began jotting down notes. Please turn to face me completely, she requested, aiming for a professional tone though her inner self was struggling to maintain composure. Following her instruction, Naruto turned, and Hana nearly gasped. In her mind's eye, she saw not a young boy, but a man with distinct whisker marks etched deeply on his cheeks. His physique was imposing, resembling that of a war deity, both in front and behind. His piercing blue eyes seemed to momentarily crackle with power, though she dismissed it as mere imagination, feeling her senses jolted by their intensity. As you can see, there's nothing to hide, Naruto stated calmly, observing Hana lost in thought. Shaken from her reverie, Hana redirected her attention to Naruto's gloved hand. What's this? She inquired, her tone shifting towards professionalism, although her curiosity tugged at her emotions. It's something I acquired while spending time with my father, Naruto replied truthfully, though he left the details for another occasion. Hana remained skeptical, scrutinizing his hand closely, sensing something contained within the glove. Yet her dog-like instincts couldn't discern the veracity of Naruto's words. Deciding to revisit the matter later, she resumed her measurements, recording his height, width, and other details with a tape measure, knowing she had ample time to delve further into the mystery. She cursed inwardly, quit with the filthy thoughts. He's just a kid at 18, way too green for you. But damn it all, as she sized him up, her fingers grazed his left muscled leg. A flush spread across her cheeks at the accidental touch, and she couldn't deny the surprising jolt it sent through her. It definitely wasn't his sword, she knew that much, making her regret opening her mouth to him in the first place. Holy moly, he's massive! Hana couldn't help but think, struggling to keep her expression neutral while her mind raced with all the scandalous scenarios she could enact with him right then and there. She scolded herself for her impure thoughts, quickly redirecting her attention back to the examination. I smell honey, thought Naruto, his annoyance mounting as he realized he held no allure towards her. Admitting her physical appeal, he remained resolute in his reluctance to pursue someone so obedient, a mere follower without the capacity for independent thought. How could he ever consider a relationship with someone lacking their own mind? Yes, she was undeniably attractive, but Naruto couldn't overlook her submissive nature. She adhered to the pack's directives without question, devoid of personal autonomy. The idea of being with a woman who couldn't think for herself seemed inconceivable to him. I've got the perfect plan to get even with her. No violence involved, and she won't end up 6 feet under, Kushina chuckled softly. Naruto's movement ceased. He understood that when his mother sought revenge, she could be as merciless and relentless as he was, if not more so. Correction. She could be even more ruthless and unforgiving than him. Well, he must have inherited it from someone. Kushina conveyed her plan to Naruto telepathically, prompting him to grow visibly annoyed. Seriously, Mom? That's your big idea? He complained inwardly. It wasn't something he was particularly keen on pursuing. Grumbling with irritation, Naruto reluctantly agreed to go along with Kushina's plan. Fine, but you can't watch, he insisted, severing their telepathic connection abruptly. Kushina let out a squawk of indignation, clearly displeased with being excluded from observing the execution of her own scheme. Suddenly, it felt like Hana couldn't think straight, couldn't even catch her breath. Her arousal surged at the mere sight of this alpha. She craved him desperately, needing him right then and there. What? I can't do that, I'm still a virgin, she tried to reason with herself, her thoughts racing. Yeah, and what better way to lose it than to a total hunk who probably has tons of experience? Her inner pervert chimed in, making its presence known. I'm not sure, she stammered, feeling overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Stop hesitating and just go for it, girl. Screw him. Her inner voice urged, pushing her to take action. Lemon, and then, before she knew what was happening, Naruto closed the distance between them, pressing his lips against hers. Hana was taken aback, but she couldn't deny the spark that ignited between them. She tried to push him away, but instead found herself pulling him closer, her body responding to his touch. As the kiss deepened, Naruto's hands began to wander, exploring Hana's curves. She gasped as he cupped her breasts, his thumb brushing against her through the fabric of her shirt. Despite herself, Hana found herself becoming more and more turned on. She had never experienced anything like this before, and she wasn't sure how to react. But as Naruto's touch became more insistent, she found herself responding in kind. Before she knew what was happening, Naruto was pulling off her shirt, exposing her bra-clad breasts. Hana's heart raced as she felt his hot breath against her skin, his lips closing around her. She moaned as he sucked and bit at her, her body writhing beneath him. Fuck, you're so hot, Naruto growled, his hands pulling at Hana's pants. She helped him, kicking off her shoes and wiggling out of her pants until she was standing in front of him in nothing but her bra and panties. Naruto's eyes raked over her body, taking in every inch of her. You're fucking gorgeous, he murmured, his fingers tracing the line of her panties. Hana felt a shiver of anticipation run down her spine as Naruto hooked his fingers under the waistband of her panties, pulling them down her legs. She stepped out of them, standing naked in front of him. Naruto's eyes darkened as he took in the sight of her, his cock already hard and throbbing in his pants. "I need to taste you," he growled, dropping to his knees in front of her. Hana gasped as Naruto's tongue found her clit, lapping at her with long, slow strokes. She reached down, tangling her fingers in his hair as he sucked and bit at her, her hips bucking against his mouth. "Oh fuck yes," she moaned, her orgasm building inside her. She felt herself getting close, her body tensing as Naruto's tongue worked its magic. But just as she was about to come, Naruto pulled away, standing up to face her. "I want to feel you come on my," he growled, pulling down his pants and revealing his hard cock. Hana's eyes widened as she took in the sight of him, her body responding instinctively. She dropped to her knees in front of him, her hand closing around his shaft. Naruto hissed as she began to stroke him, her hand moving up and down his length. He reached down, tangling his fingers in her hair as she leaned forward, her lips closing around the head of his